Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Architects, and I'm so excited to be here with you. We're here, as we do often, to answer any type of cloud architect or cloud computing career questions that you may have. See, I've been working in this technology field now for over 25 years, and I've loved every last minute of it. But I remember when I started my career about 25 years ago, I was just lost. I didn't know what to do. I called certification providers. I spent about $20,000 on certifications, none of which actually led to me getting hired. And I wasted a lot of time. I spent a lot of effort in a lot of things, and it wasn't the most productive use of my time. And I don't want anybody to ever go through that. I want you all to have the absolute best technology careers in the world. And because of that, that's why we're here, literally speaking, to answer any type of cloud computing questions you may actually have. So that's why we're here. So if you've got some questions, please bring them in. We're here to answer any type of cloud computing questions or concerns or anything that's about building your career. So love having you guys here. I see Sandy's here. Welcome, Sandy. I know you're a student. I'm super happy to see you. Richard Rich, welcome. Vishal, welcome. I hope you all had an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. I know mine was kind of great. It was a little bit uneventful, but I was actually invited to speak to a very large group in sub-Saharan Africa, and it was a wonderful experience to really talk about technology with many people from all over the world. I absolutely love doing it. And because of that, we're here with you today. So we're really here talking about how to actually build your best tech career. So when questions come in, we'll answer them. To let you know, we want to answer any possible question you have, so that you actually have the best opportunities to build your career. To let you know, we don't run them very often, but we have a 35% Black Friday sale that applies to literally everything on our store, whether it be our interview program, whether it be our cloud architect career development, whether it be private coaching services, literally everything on our store until tomorrow is 35% off. It's the last day. So if you want or are interested in any of our products or services, please take advantage of the 35% discount while it actually exists. So here's the thing. We want you to be successful. We want you to be hired. And we're going to start answering questions. So if you've got some questions, please ask them. I don't want to see anybody waste months, weeks, years. I don't want to see anybody spend a fortune on training only to be lost. So Vishal, welcome. It's always great to see you. Sandy, so happy to see you. Always happy to see you. Richard Rich, welcome. So if somebody has a question, please feel free to ask the question. Vishal, does cloud architecture require DevOps? It's an absolutely great question, and the answer is emphatically no. Cloud architecture and DevOps are exactly opposite careers. And, there's a lot of confusion with regards to what is a cloud architect. But architecture has nothing to do with DevOps. Vishal, I'll explain it very clearly to you. I'm going to explain all the different cloud jobs. A cloud architect like me does the following. We design end-to-end systems. That's all we do. We design. So Vishal, we architects do not code. We do not configure. We do not maintain. We do not do DevOps. We design. So Vishal, as an architect like me, I'll meet with the client. I'm going to start with those client executives because I need to know about their business. I need to know about their business challenges, their business goals, their pain points, what the analysts in the industry are saying about them, what the business's competitors are doing. And then Vishal, I have to have enough business acumen or business knowledge to be able to go to that executive and say, I can help you optimize your business through technology. And then as an architect, I'm going to go design it. And then after it's done being designed, Vishal, I'm going to hand it over to a team of cloud engineers to build. And the cloud engineers will build it. And you know what will happen, Vishal, when the cloud engineers are done building it? They will hand it to his team of sysops engineers that are going to maintain it. They're the maintenance people of the cloud. And somewhere along the line, we're going to have software release cycles that need to be done, and the DevOps engineers will do that. I might design something, and maybe it can be deployed as infrastructure as code. So an architect like me will turn it over to the cloud engineering team, who may hand it over to a DevOps engineer. But architects are not a hands-on position. Hands-on to the architect is a presentation. Hands-on to the architect is making a diagram. Hands-on to the architect is selling. Hands-on to the architect is writing a Word document. We are not hands-on people. So cloud architecture has no DevOps in it. It actually has no hands-on anything. So no management console, no command line, literally nothing. So, I think DevOps is a good career. Just keep this in mind, Vishal. DevOps is going to pay a lot less than architecture. And here's the reason why, Vishal. DevOps is a great career, and I think it's one of the top 10 best careers. But DevOps is far away from the customer, and DevOps is far away from the money. So here's what I mean. If an architect like me is going to go influence the CEO of a company, $1 trillion company, and I can go influence $1 billion in their budget, and I can create $1 billion sale, I'm worth a lot to the company. I'm worth a lot to the company that's actually hiring me, because if my $1 billion architecture might make them $2 or $3 billion in increased sales, which makes me a business partner, and I'm worth a lot to my company because I just brought in $1 billion of sales for cloud services. So Vishal, you will always, always, always have a far better career as an architect than an engineer because you're closer to the money. That means much greater career potential. It means much higher salaries. And it also means more rapid escalation. So when you ask me if I think which is better, a DevOps career or a cloud architecture career, I think you can earn 2 to 3 times the money as a cloud architect, and I think you can get promoted 2 to 3 times faster, and I think you can have 2 to 3 times better outcomes. If you're like me and you enjoy talking and presenting and selling and designing. Now, Vishal, if you actually like being behind a computer all day long and staring at a computer screen, you might not like architecture because architecture is customer facing and sales. And then DevOps might actually be a good career. I think DevOps is a great career. I want to make it clear. I think it's a great career. Automation is the future of engineering. I just work more on the architecture side than the engineering side. Engineering careers are great. If architects like me design it and there's no engineers, there's nothing. It's not built. I just enjoy the architecture side. But I loved engineering when I worked as an engineer before I became an architect, and lots of great engineers are out there and they love it. So what's better is going to be based on what makes you happy. Just understand there's much higher salary potential, career potential, and advancement anytime you're in architecture as opposed to engineering, but they're both great careers. So Vishal, whatever is going to make you happy. Just make sure one thing, Vishal, if you want to be an architect, do not study DevOps. And if you want to be a DevOps engineer, here's the thing. If you want to be a DevOps engineer, it's DevOps that you're studying. If you want to be a maintenance person, study SysOps. If you want to be an architect, make sure you study actual architecture, because the more DevOps and the more things you actually have on your career and your resume that's not related to your career makes you look scattered. And the more scattered you are, the lower your salaries are and the harder it is to get hired. So if you're a DevOps engineer and you want to be an architect, make sure you show your architecture skills and not your DevOps engineering skills, because they're looking for architecture, not DevOps skills. Sani, is there ever a time where you would recommend a student go into a different specialty of architecture during their learning? And how do you approach that? Sure. There would be times, Sani, if, for example, someone came to me and they said, I want to do cloud security. And then when they start learning firewalls and IDS and security policies, they hate it. I would say, sure, do something different. Don't do something that's going to make you miserable. So does it happen? Not often. Most people come to me, by the time they get to me, they know what they want. But, we all change. I started in networking, and then I did security. Then I went back to networking. Then I did some cloud stuff, and I did back to networking. But it comes down to it. I always find myself in networking. Even on the cloud, I'm still doing networking. So realistically, the key is finding the one that makes you most happy. So, yeah, Sani, if you find something and you don't think you love it, well, you just find something else. No big deal. There are plenty of places in tech. I don't care if you specialize in security. I don't care if you specialize in banking. I don't care if you specialize in cloud architecture for healthcare. There's always, always, always a place to build some expertise. And I think the key is becoming great, great, great at whatever it is that you actually need. Okay, so Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. Okay, well, I can't see the next question. So if you can bring in the next question just for a quick second so I can read it.
It's on the screen.
Right. Okay, well, I've got no questions that I can see on StreamYard, so I don't know which questions you're referring to. Richard Rich. Mike, glad to be here. Can you tell me your thoughts on someone with no previous tech experience and learn minimal coding for data science who now has to do with cloud architecture? Yeah, sure, Richard Rich. I can tell you that. And now you can take the thing off the screen if you desire. So, Richard Rich, here's the key. I know lots of people that have come with no coding experience background and picked up cloud architecture jobs. And I actually had, one data scientist that came with me, wanted to be an architect, and then he went off on his own and became a cloud engineer. And he would have been a great, great, great architect. But he chose to do the engineering side. And I think that's really where he was happiest. In his spare time, he was actually coding all these machine learning kind of things, and he did really well with that. But I think he liked to do that side of it. So being the more hands-on tech versus the more architecture side. But see, here's the thing. I've had lots of people over the years go into architecture, and whether they had a little bit of tech experience from data science, or whether they were nurses or nurse practitioners like me, whether they were physical therapists, whether they were pharmacists, whether they were house cleaners, whether they were gym rats, whether they were wrestlers, I've had them all get architect jobs over the course of the years. So to me, it really has nothing to do with anyone's starting point. That's really the funny piece for me. What I noticed is as follows. It seems to me that the world is always wants to tell me about their current experience. And their current experience doesn't matter to me so much as their attitude matters. And I have to say this, in my background, in my experience, anyone can do anything if they're willing to work for it. I'm going to say this again. Anyone can do anything. I know physicians working in public relations. I know medical professionals like me that are working as cloud architects. I had a manager who was a physician, and you know what he did? He practiced law. So the point is any of us can do whatever we want. The key is, are we willing to do it? So here's where we're at. We're at a world where we can do whatever we want, and we have access to quality of information. So here's the key about that career transition, Richard Rich. First, start with the hiring manager. Find out what the ideal hiring manager's dream hire is. What would it be if they had the perfect pick? So now you know the ultimate state, the exact perfect person the hiring manager is going to want. Now, once you know the perfect person, the perfect hire, I want you to take a step backwards. Say, if perfect hire X is emotionally intelligent, is an expert communicator, is an expert on architecture, is an expert presenter. Now go look at where you're at and say, are you an expert on architecture? If not, become an expert on architecture. Are you an expert presenter? If the answer is no, become an expert presenter. If your emotional intelligence is up to snuff, great. If it's not, guess what? Go focus on it. Focus on filling in every single gap that you actually have, keeping you from being the perfect candidate for the hiring manager. Now, once you know exactly what the hiring manager wants, and you know exactly everything you want, you've got a list. So this is a list of perfection. This is a list of your starting point. So now build a plan to get you from your starting point to which is here, to the perfection, which is here, and then gradually fill in all those gaps until you get to the perfection. And when you're at the perfection, you polish up your resume, you polish up your social media, you polish up your LinkedIn, you polish up your brand, and you go get interviewed by calling the best recruiters that'll put you directly in front of the hiring managers so you don't get stuck in HR. A recruiter that knows you, a recruiter that knows the hiring manager. We have 300 in our system that we use for our students. Then you go interview, you wow the hiring manager with your capabilities, your great attitude, your great energy, your great enthusiasm, your passion, and then you're getting hired. See, that's really the key to what it takes. The key is find out what the customer wants, and the hiring manager is a customer. Deliver your customer everything they want and package it perfectly. By doing that, you'll get hired. I've got students that change jobs every day, and it's never a big deal. I went from practicing internal medicine to lead network architect at the world's largest internet service provider within 6 months of the first time I even heard of a router or a network. So the point is, you can do it too. It happens all the time. I help people do it. Go for your dreams. Just put all your time, effort, and oomph and focus on one thing, and you'll get there. If we want to bring in the next question. Perhaps. Dorian Wright, what cloud architect is in most demand? Dorian, I don't think there's any shortage of demand for any cloud architect right now. I mean, just absolute critical shortage for cloud architects. critical cloud shortage for network architects, critical shortage for cloud, for cloud security architects, critical shortage for cloud big data architects, critical everything. I mean, there are literally hundreds of thousands of open positions that no one can fill because there's almost nobody that's actually qualified. There's a whole lot of certified people. I mean, there's millions of them out there. Everybody's certified, but certified does not mean hireable. Here's the problem, Dorian. We interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people, and it was like they all knew the name of the service and how to configure it, but none of them knew how to design it. None of them even knew what a virtual machine was or an EC2 instance, and most didn't even have a concept of storage. So the key is as follows. All of them are in demand. I could literally train one architect and send them on an interview, and they could get 5 different jobs on a single interview because the company has a need that they could fill all 5, but you have to be good at it. So Dorian, I know in about 16 weeks, you're going to be really, really good at this. So here's really the key. What makes an architect so hireable is not their tech skills. We must be technically competent. I got to say, we must be technically competent. But there's lots of technically competent people out there. It's our business acumen. It's our emotional intelligence. It's our leadership skills, our communication skills, our executive presence, our gravitas. That's what makes us. It's the business knowledge to be able to talk to that customer and improve their business through the use of tech. That's why they're willing to pay us. That's what makes us so good. We are not just a tech person. We are not a configurer. We don't automate. We don't script. We don't code. We don't configure. We're architects. We design. It's funny. I was speaking to one of my new architect graduates that's got a really great architect job. And he's in England, and he took a really great cloud architect job with one of the big 4 firms. And he calls me and he's like, Mike, the company just bought me a brand new car. I always wanted an electric car and I got one. Mike, the company bought me this. Mike, the company's doing this. And then he says, Mike, he said, you know how you taught me all this tech? I said, yes. He said, remember you told me it's all leadership and emotional intelligence and executive presence and communication? I said, yes. He said, I haven't done any tech in the last 2 months. All I've done is written documents and papers. I said, are you having fun? He said, I'm literally getting paid to take people to dinner. I said, yeah, there's a lot of that in architecture. So much of it is not technical. But there will be a technical time and you'll have to have the technical skills. But the key for the architect is we're not coders, we're not configurers, we're not maintainers. We are designers, and we design to solve business problems. So don't worry about which kind of cloud architect is most in demand. The question is, which one isn't in demand, and there's none. The people that actually understand and can design systems and solve business problems are always in short supply. So don't worry about it. Everything's in extreme demand. Chris, if you want to bring up the next one. Vishal, how do you get an internship for cloud architecture in your 2nd year of engineering? Okay, Vishal, there's 2 things going on. You're talking about your 2nd year of engineering, and then you're wanting to do architecture. Here's the thing. Architecture and engineering are really, really, really different. Engineering is about all the idiosyncrasies and the tech and how to build the tech and how to configure the tech. Architecture is not about the tech at all. It's about what business problems you're actually trying to solve, and then what technologies will solve them. So Vishal, you're going in 2 different directions. So if you're in your 2nd year of engineering and you're interested in learning architecture, in your engineering program, do you have electives? Because those engineering electives you have aren't going to be that relevant for you. But if you can take a course on ROI modeling, if you can take a presentation skills class, if you could take a business writing class, if you can do these things, if you could take some leadership or management training, that's going to really help you become a better architect. Now, with regards to how do you get an internship, I don't know how you're going to get an internship for architecture per se, because architecture assumes you have to know how to design. And it also assumes you have the business knowledge. But you could get a cloud kind of internship of some kind. So you could reach out to current businesses in your local area, and you could pretty much offer them and say, you are a graduate student, you'd like to work for someone and help them and learn at the same time and see what happens. I've seen lots of people that are very successful go to LinkedIn and say, I'm a very hardworking 2nd year engineering student. I'd like to do some internship projects to help you in your business. Tell me what are your goals and let me see how I can help you. So the answer is sure, you can try and get an internship that way. I used to create a lot of internships. I just don't have the time to manage the internships anymore, so I don't do them anymore. Here's the thing with interns and internships. You don't want to get an internship where you're just going to be just doing something all day long, like making YAML templates for containers or something like this. You want to be doing something that's special, something where you're going to learn. So it's not that hard. If you want an internship, just post something on LinkedIn. You'll get somebody to respond to you relatively quickly. You can also search for businesses. You could also look for little businesses that need help. For example, I helped when the pandemic became a while. I'm a yoga instructor. It's not something I talk about. I became a 500-hour yoga instructor just for myself because I love yoga so much and I practice it every day and I wanted to learn more. So for example, when the pandemic hit, I took 2 or 3 yoga studios and took them online so they could still offer their services. That would be the kind of thing that you could do. You could work with some small businesses and do some volunteer for work for them. And then you could build a portfolio of projects that you did. And that way, when you're done school, in addition to that engineering, which is all tech, you'll have some business things that you've done as well. Maybe build somebody a new website, which is small. Maybe take their storage online. Maybe set up some disaster recovery. There's lots of quick wins that you can do for people, and the cloud gives you lots of opportunities. So that's how I would do it. And I think you'd be in great shape. Or if you could get some kind of a paid job that's part-time in tech, you could also count that as an internship and be in a much better financial state as well. So I hope I answered your question in there. And then Chris, if you want to bring in some more questions, I'd love to answer them. Hi, Mike. So an architect needs to know a lot of on-premise, right? Giovanni, an architect needs to know all about on-premise. And here's why. Here's what we architects do. We take stuff from on-premise and put it in the cloud. You can't move it on the cloud unless you know on-premise. But Giovanni, here's the thing. It's all on-premise. And this is where the cloud providers have confused everybody. A server is just a server. And if it's a virtual machine on your VMware ESXi in your data center, or KVM or QEMU, or it's a virtual machine in Azure, or an EC2 instance, or a Google Compute Engine instance, it's the same tech. Now, I need a load balancer, a network load balancer. Does it matter, Giovanni, if it's an F5 load balancer at my data center, or a virtual load balancer, like an Elastic load balancer on AWS, or a cloud load balancer on Google, or an Azure load balancer? No, it's still all the same on-premise tech. All of it's all the same on-premise tech. It's just virtualized in the cloud. So here's where people go wrong. They take all these certification training courses. And I want to say that they're a little better than useless. And here's the thing, they do get you certified, which is valid because the certification basically helps you get an interview. But the certification is, here's the name of S3 and here's how to configure it. Well, guess what? As architects, we don't configure anything. And the name of the service is silly or irrelevant to us. You know, an architect like me and all architects I know, they're going to say, okay, we need object storage. This needs to go on block storage. We need a firewall here. We need an IDS, IPS system here. We need an access control list. We don't talk about the name of the service. That's silly. We design our architecture in terms of the tech. We need a router to the internet. This needs to speak BGP. We need to send this on a VLAN. This needs an 802.1q tag. We think in terms of tech. All architects think in terms of tech. And you know what that tech is, Giovanni? It's all on-premise tech. And then once we know what our tech is, I need a NoSQL database for flexibility and schema and scalability. Okay. Do I choose MongoDB? Do I choose Apache Cassandra? Do I use key spaces? Do I use DynamoDB? Do I use Google Cloud Bigtable? Who cares? I need a NoSQL database. And if I know what the tech is, I just go there. So Giovanni, if you know on-premise, you can work on any cloud. It's all on-premise. So if you want to be an architect, definitely know on-premise. And if you want to be a good engineer, you probably should know on-premise too, because that's all you're going to be doing. You're going to be physically creating the equivalent of what you had on the cloud. But architecture is all about on-premise. Architecture is all about transforming. You can't transform what you don't know. So on-premise, on-premise, and on-premise some more. But, you know, Giovanni, I got to tell you, the people that have an easy time getting cloud jobs, they can have 0 certification. And if they know the network and the data center from on-premise, they're getting hired. And most of the senior and principal and distinguished architects that I know, they're CCIEs like me that never worked in the cloud. They just one day said, I want to work in the cloud. And you know what? Why it was so easy for them? Because everything on the cloud is the same thing. Wow, we've got Transit Gateway and Cloud Hub. That's like a BGP route reflector in 1990. AWS just allowed east-west routing, a routing between subnets. Cisco did that in 1990. So, you know, we've got that. And literally speaking, all these new technologies, the network load balancer, F5 did it 20 years ago. Object storage, we've had it for decades from Dell, EMC, et cetera, et cetera. It's all the same tech. It's just virtualized on the cloud. So learn the old tech, you know the new tech, and you'll always be employed, and you'll be paid a lot more too, because the hiring managers want to know that you know the old tech. And by learning the old tech, you know the new tech. But by learning the new tech, you don't learn the old tech. So I'd like you to be able to work on any cloud. Plus, Giovanni, working on any cloud is really what matters, because if you learn the tech, it's all the same on every cloud. Where if you only know the name of the service and how to configure it, you're going to have to learn each new cloud separately. So Giovanni, it's always good to see you. And yes, you need to know a lot about the on-premises tech. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Mohammed La Mahmoud Mia. Hey, Mike, for being a cloud architect, should someone also learn Red Hat, OpenShift, Kubernetes, and Ansible? Well, Mohammed, it depends in what way. As architects, we have to be very familiar with all the types of computing platforms. What are our computing platforms? Virtual machines and containers. So we should know all about container orchestration and how they're working. So we should know how a Kubernetes cluster is set up, the control plane of the Kubernetes cluster, the data plane of the Kubernetes cluster. We've got to know that. We've got to be able to set that up. Now, are we going to be configuring Kubernetes clusters? No. Are we going to be touching Ansible? No. Are we going to be touching OpenShift? No. So there's a big difference, Mohammed, between knowing what it needs to be, sizing them, and planning them and building them. So I would say you should know about containers, but whether it's Red Hat, OpenShift, Kubernetes, or Ansible, I would only learn Kubernetes, and I wouldn't become a Kubernetes guru. I would understand the design and architecture principles of Kubernetes, not the configuration, because remember, we're architects as cloud architects, not DevOps engineers, where we're going to be building these containers. So hope I answered your question there, but because it's a great question. So I'd focus more on the architectural piece, how the containers are designed, how they're orchestrated, the forwarding plane, the control plane, the orchestration layer, as well as the data plane where the work is done on the servers, or maybe a service like Fargate. Then I would still make sure I focus more on the compute design, the network design, the load balancer design, the storage design, the security design. That's what goes into it. So focus on the design components, not the individual components, and how the components work. That's really, really, really your critical components and functions. Okay, Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. And before you bring in the next one, if anybody has any questions, please bring them in. It's really a nice opportunity to connect with the community, and I want to make sure we answer any questions you may have. So hit the like button, ask any questions you may have. Hope you guys all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, by the way. Vinod Singh, how much automation is important for an architecture and job interview? Vinod, automation is a DevOps skill, which means it's from a different career. So automation is not our world. Our world is end-to-end system design. So it's almost irrelevant on a cloud architect interview. Now, here's the thing. We still need to know what is automation. We need to know what those DevOps people do. And we need to know whom to call. So, it's really funny. I used to practice internal medicine, which really was cloud architect training. And I'll explain to you why. And recently, all my graduates that get hired, when I speak to them, they're like, Mike, I didn't realize I was the quarterback. Now, I don't know anything about football, but apparently the quarterback's a coordinator of some kind. I don't know. But here's the thing. Here's what an internal medicine doctor does, or a nurse practitioner, whatever. A patient comes in and they ask that patient, tell me what's going on. And then we examine their systems. We make diagnosis and a plan. But here's the thing, Vinod. When someone comes in with high blood pressure, as a family practitioner in internal medicine, I could treat it. I know how, but I don't. I say, I notice your blood pressure is high. I'd like you to go see that cardiologist. And I ask the cardiologist for a recommendation. If someone's diabetic, I send them to the endocrinologist. I know how to write an insulin prescription, but I send them to a specialist for a consult. A person's got back pain. I send them to physical therapy for treatment. I don't do it myself. Someone's got a lump in their throat and I send them to an otolaryngologist or an ear, nose, and throat surgeon to go look at it. Someone's got pain in their hand and I send them to a hand surgeon. Here's what I did, Vinod. I am the coordinator, the facilitator of their care, and I send it to all the experts. Do you know what we do as architects? We are not really technical people, Vinod. We are coordinators of experts. So as a cloud architect, when it comes to networking, I'm going to pull that cloud network engineer and cloud network architect, and I'm going to do the network piece. And I'm going to steal that cloud security architect to help me on the security piece. And I'm going to find the cloud IAM architect to help me with the IAM component. I mean, yes, that's different than security. And I'm going to find a cloud database architect to help me with the data side. And if I've got a big data environment, I'm going to find some data scientists and some big data people. Here's the key. I'm going to keep adding people. And I'm going to be the coordinator of asking the experts. So on a cloud architect job, the hiring manager wants to know you have that skill. Do you have the leadership skills? That's got to come up on your interview. Do you have the actual design skills? That's got to come up on your interview. Do you know where to get access to the right information? That's got to show up on the interview. How clear you speak, how well you present on a good cloud architect interview, you're going to be asked to present. So it's not going to be where you're going to be talking about DevOps skills. You're going to be talking about architecture skills. I interacted with this client, and through my design, I saved them 11%. I interacted with this client, and we increased sales by 11% with a new revenue, with a new website, which increased sales by $1.6 billion last month. Whatever the case is, we've got numbers and metrics and transformation. So Vinod, when we're talking about architecture interviews, we're talking about how our designs improved someone's business. The difference between an architect and an engineer is an architect is about transforming a business with technology, and an engineer is about building the technology that the architect defined. So Vinod, it is very important to be able to show the hiring manager on an interview how you can create business value, how you can solve your customers' problems, how you can lead a team, how you can present, how you can sell, and how you can document. These are architect skills. DevOps engineering or automating thing is not really something that we do. So knowing how to make systems, self-reliant and self-healing and what goes into it, yes, but actually doing it is not. So you're not going to be asked a lot of automation questions unless you apply for a DevOps engineer job. But engineering and architecture are very different careers. Now, they're both great careers, and I recommend that you take either one. Either one could be good, but you can't be both because they're conflicting with each other. The goals are different. So just figure out which one you want to do. Then take your hot time, your effort, your focus, and focus it all on one thing. And don't quit till you're the best, and you'll be highly successful. And Vinod, I'd love to answer the second half of that question if you've got more, but I want to make sure we answered your first part of your question first. So please feel free to come back with questions. And Chris, if you've got more, please, by all means, bring it up. Oh, and hit the like button as well. Richard Rich, when you say infrastructure architect, can you elaborate a little more on what the infrastructure is? Yes, absolutely, Richard Rich, and that is a really, really, really great question. So here's the thing. The infrastructure is the stuff that makes everything work. So infrastructure is typically thought of as the network, which means the routers, the switches, the cables, the WAN links, et cetera, et cetera. Many people would consider the servers, the storage, and the load balancers to also be infrastructure. We don't typically think about them as infrastructure architects. We typically think more of the networking people, but all the stuff that makes it all happen is your infrastructure. Your firewalls, infrastructure. Of course, they could also be construed as security, and they're typically construed as security, but your routers, your switches, your cables, your networking, your routing protocols, all that stuff is infrastructure. So think networking when you think infrastructure as a rule. Cloud infrastructure, cloud networking. But great question there. And if you want to bring in the next question there, Chris. Dorian Wright, you watched a previous video with Christina and I, and she mentioned that pre-sales architect and post-sales delivery. Can we explain the difference? Absolutely. So Dorian, there's gonna be two kinds of roles. Now, the architect is usually pre-sales. So here's what pre-sales is. You go work for, say, Amazon, Google, Cisco, anybody, who cares? And they set up a meeting with a client. You've got a sales rep and a cloud architect, and you go meet with a big bank. and you ask they start with the executives. You ask those executives about their business, and they tell you about their business, and they say they've grown 11% year over year, and they're looking to increase revenues, and they're looking to adopt a new trading system, and they're looking to gain a millisecond of competitive advantage or nanosecond of competitive advantage on an algorithmic trading system, and they're looking to do all this kind of great stuff. So this is exactly all of what everybody's trying to do. So the answer is yes. So that's what we do as pre-sales. We go, we ask, we design, and we go sell it back to the customer. Now, there are post-sales people. Post-sales delivery people are actually after we design it and after we sell it. Then somebody has to go build it. And post-sales delivery people are typically your cloud engineers. They're the builders. And then that gets turned over to a sysops team to maintain it after the building is all done. So post-sales delivery are the people that are there. Now, you will find some architects that also work post-sales. And what they do is a little bit unique. So the pre-sales people, Dorian, may or may not be the most technically savvy on the team, but they're also going to be the most business-oriented and the most highly paid because they're most business-oriented. After a cloud architect like me were to sell it, you might have a post-sales architect. Now, the post-sales architect will review the designs, make sure they're going to work, which, a good cloud architect like me would have done already with a team of 30 or 40 people long before I made the design, and I would. But then you'll make sure the design will work, and you'll go to your team of cloud engineers, and they're going to say, yes, 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 no, change this, change this, change this. And then you may test it again, and then you may build it. So the post-sales side are the people that actually deliver it afterwards. Again, the cloud architect is still going to be a leadership role. So they're not going to be the person configuring everything. They're going to be kind of the coordinator on the main technical lead, like a service delivery executive sort of thing. So when you deal with service delivery after it's been sold, that's post-sales work. That is actually implementation. Most cloud architects are pre-sales, meaning design and sell, design and sell, design and sell. Some actually work for the organizations that do it, in which case they design systems and then they present it to the management and convince their management they need to do it. But post-sales is after it's been sold, somebody builds it. And usually there's a build team, which is very separate from the design team. And then Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. And Dorian, if you've got more questions or want to get deeper into that, I'd love to. So just let me know. Oh yeah, hit that like button. Reminder to everybody that we have this last day for the Black Friday discount. So if you're looking for any of our courses, now's definitely a good time to do it because we don't do 35% off almost ever. So, Sandy, when should you start learning Linux? Always. Our employers looking for Linux competency in cloud architects. So, Sandy, I think we have to go real careful with what we call competency in architects versus engineers. We architects are not hands-on people. I'm going to say this again. We cloud architects are not hands-on people. We are customer-facing people. Now, if you're asking me if we need to learn Linux, the answer is yes. Absolutely. You must know how Linux works. You must understand about the Linux kernel and about the packages and the way the package dependencies are. You need to know this. You need to understand the architecture of the operating system, the kernel modules, the system libraries, the drivers, all that stuff and how it works. You need to understand Linux hypervisors because the whole cloud is built on Linux. So the answer is yes, you should. Now, how would I learn Linux? I'm going to tell you, Sandy, how I've coached most people to learn Linux. Now, I am not Mr. Linux. I've worked with Linux for over 25 years. I love Linux, but, it's not my biggest strength. But, it's something I know enough about. But it's not, it's not my career. My career is networking and architecture. So here's what I did, Sandy, and here's what I recommend. Take your notebook, your desktop, or whatever your main computer is. Back up all your data. Erase everything. Install Red Hat Linux, CentOS Linux, or Ubuntu Linux. Use that as your main computer for 6 months. Do everything on this computer. If you have to install something, install it from the command line. And whether that's a yum install on a Red Hat or an Amazon kind of flavor or a sudo apt install something, or from and on Debian or an Ubuntu. It doesn't matter. Get familiar with the commands, install things from the commands, and then 6 months later, you're going to know about Linux. Why do you need to know about Linux, Sandy? Well, here's the thing. Like 498 out of the 500 world's biggest web servers are, are all running on Linux. So everything's Linux. All the supercomputer computers are on Linux. All the embedded operating systems on Linux. The OpenStack Ansible cloud, Linux. The other clouds, they're all Linux. They're all running basically Linux hypervisors, Linux kernels, Linux hypervisors, and a Linux control plane. And the control plane's installed in Linux. And the forwarding plane is still also on Linux on all these servers. So the whole cloud is on Linux. So when should you start learning Linux? Yesterday. How do you want you to start learning Linux? Do yourself a favor. Give yourself one Linux computer and use it as your only computer. Use the command line. In a couple months, Sandy, you'll be an expert on Linux. And guess what? It didn't cost you anything to do because Linux is free. And you didn't have to spend any time studying for it because Linux is free. Every time you need something doesn't work, Google it and you'll figure it out. That's how I build Linux competency. That's how I learned. Well, actually, that's not exactly how I learned. What happened is when I was migrating systems from Windows 95 to Windows 98, which even crashed when Bill Gates was demoing it, and it would crash day and day and day and every day, I started using Linux. But then I've taught many people by using Linux just by switching over their notebook to Linux. And I got to tell you, it's a great, great, great way to do it. So employers are looking for Linux competency or at least Linux knowledge, not the ability to configure it, but knowledge of how it works. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Can I give you the DREIF roadmap? How to learn cloud architecture, please. I don't know what DREIF means. So I will tell you how to learn cloud architecture. The easiest and simplest way to learn cloud architecture is to take our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, which is a 250-hour program for technology professionals, and it is a 500-hour technology program for non-technology professionals. And on Thursday this week, we're going to have a completely free seminar on Zoom, and you'll come on this question, and we will tell you for 1 hour every step that you need to do to get hired, and then you can ask us questions specifically on Zoom related to you and your personality and everything you'll be able to do. So, and you'll be able to ask questions live on Zoom. So let's tell you what you need to learn. If you really want to be a cloud architect, first I'll start with the technical. And I'm going to tell you, the technical piece is less than half of this job. The non-technical piece is more than 50%. I will tell you, most of the people that don't get hired as cloud architects are because they're certification junkies and they're learning certifications and they're learning everything other than cloud architecture. They're studying Python, they're studying scripting, they're studying coding, they're studying DevOps, they're studying sysops. Any of these things is actually a way or a distraction from architecture. And in many cases, if they're on your resume, they make you harder to get hired. So when we see people with a lot of these things on their resume, we typically remove them and they get hired a couple of days later. We have to change them. Remember, the architect is a brand. The brand of the architect is an executive. It's a leader. It's a really senior business person that also understands tech. So it's a hybrid business executive / tech. So the roadmap to learn architecture is going to be as follows. First, you must learn the network and the data center. That's the cloud. That's the tech piece. What do I mean by that? You must know BGP because all the routing's done on BGP. You must know IP addressing and how to set up IP addresses for the company, which ultimately affects the routing. You must know WAN protocols such as Ethernet over MPLS, software-defined networking, et cetera, Ethernet, fast Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, 10 gigabit Ethernet, 100 gigabit Ethernet, Ether channel, port channel, link aggregation groups. You need to know all that stuff. Then you need to know NAT, one-to-one NAT, one-to-many NAT, static NAT, dynamic NAT, etc. Then you must understand VLAN, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, 802.1q tagging, Q and Q, all those kind of things, because they're your basic, simple networking things. You realistically should know interior gateway protocols such as OSPF, etc., route summarization, subnetting, supernetting, and all of it. That's some of the networking things that you should know. Then after that, you need to learn servers and the architecture of the servers and the architecture of virtual machines, and then the architecture of containers and how they're designed. Then you need to have some real knowledge on storage. Go to Dell EMC, for example. Go to IBM and really, really, really learn about block storage, object storage, and file storage. Because it's not like you can know the name of S3 and that's good enough. You need to be able to have a 3-day conversation with somebody about their storage, all tech. And I say we're not even tech people, but we still have to have a 3-day tech storage discussion, and we have to get to that depth. So now, firewalls, how do they work? Why do they work? Intrusion detection systems, how and when to use them. VPN concentrators, we've got to know all about it. We've got to know about the types of file sharing protocols, when to use Samba, when to use NFS, when to use Windows, etc. We need to understand Active Directory and other forms of authentication, authorization, and accounting. And of course, we need to know clouds. And we should be very familiar with the Nutanix cloud, the OpenStack cloud, and all the other clouds that are out there and how they all work and how to integrate multiple clouds. That's the tech piece, Vishal. That's 50% of the job. The rest of it is related to ROI modeling, business acumen. It's related to executive presence. It's related to being relevant to the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, the CTO, and at the same time being able to deliver a different presentation to the technology team. So we're talking a lot of communication here. Now we're talking about the way to document it, and don't neglect documentation. It's literally 60% of what we do. Then presentation skills, and then sales skills. So that's how you build a cloud architect roadmap. Note, most of what I said was actually non-technical, but the technical piece is still there. So then we talk about align your certifications. You should have a good certification portfolio based upon what you like, which could be something like the Certified Solution Architect Associate and Professional for an AWS environment. And then add like a networking thing or a security thing or something big from industry to add to it. Not a bunch of silly associate certifications. Don't get more than one. Don't get a bunch of associate certifications. They don't help build your portfolio. If anything, they hurt you. One associate certification is your stepping stone on the way up. Multiple associate certifications is like junior level knowledge on a lot of things. We don't need someone with junior level knowledge on a lot of things. We need someone with senior level knowledge on a number of things. So that's the key. So that's our recommendations on how you really, really, really build yourself a fantastic career. And I know you'll do well in it. So that's how you do it. That's how we do it. And we're extremely successful with it. And please, if you've got any questions, ask them in the chat box and we'll come right back. If you're having a good time, hit that like button helps us with the algorithms. T&E event planning. How long is your promotion for the Black Friday deal? My team has told me it goes on through the end of the day today. I think that's correct. So I think that means till midnight, but I am not 100% sure. Chris from my team, is it good till midnight tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Good till midnight tonight. Get who? Seems that containers and serverless are at the heart of this digital transformation, I don't think so. In fact, I love containers, but I will tell you most organizations do not want serverless. So here's the key. We all wanted to go to the cloud for 2 reasons. The cloud has a level of agility that is the best in the world, meaning normally it takes me 6 weeks to get a server. I call Dell. They ship it to me. First they build it, then they ship it, then I unbox it, then I rack it, then I install an operating system, etc. Going to the cloud, oh my God, it takes it to seconds versus weeks. Huge. Then we all started to think about what is this great environment? We can go serverless. We can just stick it on something and then we don't have to forget about it. And then one of the cloud providers kicked somebody off of their cloud, which literally put them out of business. Somebody went cloud native. And every business that I spoke to said, well, we don't want to be on one cloud and we're never going serverless again. So I will tell you that 90+% of all cloud work is lift and shift. 90+% is lift and shift. That means taking the virtual machines from the data center and moving them in the cloud. So 90% of this plus is not containers, and almost all of it is not serverless. So where are people using serverless? They're doing Lambda functions and they're fantastic. Some people are using the serverless databases. Other organizations are saying it's way, way, way too risky. Here's the thing. Here's why a lot of organizations won't go serverless. Some organizations that might cost them $50 or $100 million to upgrade their code just to go serverless. Now they stick their code on a cloud provider, and a year later, the cloud provider raises their rates. Now they're going to go spend another $50 or $100 million to get the heck off of that cloud. So get through this. I do believe that a lot of the transformation can and may come through serverless in the future, but we're not there yet, and we are years and years away from anybody being willing to adopt serverless. In fact, what kind of you need to see was a year ago, prior to this one cloud kicking customers out of their cloud, 29% of organizations only used a single cloud. That's a lot that had a single cloud, which is a single point of failure. Since that cloud provider did that, only 3% of organizations leveraging the cloud are only on a single cloud provider. And going through a serverless scary thing like a DynamoDB, where you've got to refactor your code to get in and get out, is scary for a lot of businesses. Now, I'm not saying DynamoDB or Aurora isn't a great database. It is. I'm just saying that if you do an Apache Cassandra or a MongoDB and you've got it running and synchronizing across your AWS, your Azure, and your Google Cloud, it may be a lot easier. So depending upon the way organizations actually look at their things and they actually look at the business, serverless could actually be there. I agree with you that a lot of the transformation that's going to come from the cloud is going to have to come from serverless, because the lift and shift going straight from the data center to the cloud is not cheaper. And you lose control. And you lose performance too. Of course, you get agility and scalability, which is great. So much of the real benefit, get who, is actually going to be coming from serverless. But we architects aren't very focused on serverless. We architects aren't focused on infrastructure as code. We architects are focusing on end-to-end design and transformation. And the transformation really probably isn't coming from so much serverless as it is from the agility of the cloud. Now, the serverless adds to the agility, which could be really great, but it's the somewhat unlimited compute capacity. That's what gets exciting. Not necessarily, and the ability to plan it and the ability to not have to manage your infrastructure. And, managing multiple clouds might be a little better. So I think what we're going to see the real things are going to come from is now where everybody's going multi-cloud. We're going to look at algorithms and we're going to say, wow, Google, #1 search engine in the world. YouTube, #2 search engine in the world. Same company, Google. Wow, look at all that algorithm experience. Oh, wait, let's do our machine learning things in Google because no one can touch them. They have the most algorithm experience in the world. Now, we then say, okay, AWS is good. Azure's a backup. So now if we're on AWS and Azure, and maybe we stick our machine learning code on Google, think about the transformation we can provide our organizations. By using good routing in multiple clouds, we can leverage each cloud for what they're best at. That's transformation. So interoperability, multi-cloud, and a lot of business, that's the transformation. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it coming soon. Great questions, Gato. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Great questions, by the way. Yes, absolutely. If you've got some questions, please bring them in. Valentine, when will the DevOps career be launched? Around when? I got to tell you, I was speaking with my DevOps engineering team today that's putting it together, and they tell me optimistic dates, which I don't believe. So I would say we're about 6 weeks away from having it released, the DevOps career program. But when we do, it's going to be something really, really great, because we won't release anything that won't really help people get jobs. Lots of people's definition of success is certification. I can get anybody certified in a week. That's nothing. My definition of success is when somebody gets hired, when they call me and say, oh my God, my life has changed. I'm so happy. I'm so thankful. That's our definition of success. So, can't wait till we have it, Valentine. I hope you can wait the 6 weeks. And if you get a job between now and the 6 weeks, I'd be thrilled for you, because really the whole point of us creating any of these programs is to get you hired. But if you're not by then, I'll make sure we'll do anything we can to really help you. I'd love to work with you, Valentine. By all means, if you guys have some questions, please bring them. Vishal, what are the technical and non-technical skills makes us better cloud architecture? Okay, well, I had answered it, but maybe the questions came out of sequence. So let's answer it anyway. The technical skills are system design, and they're all coming from the network and the data center. And I gave you a really, really good list a few minutes ago. But it's the non-technical skills that are really, really, really important. It's the non-technical skills. So it's the leadership skills. It's the business acumen. It's the executive presence, or the gravitas. It's the presentation skills. It's the writing skills. It's the ROI modeling skills. It's knowing how to read people. It's knowing how to speak differently to a visual, auditory, and kinesthetic person. It's knowing how to speak to a functional personality type versus an analytical personality type versus a visionary personality type. It's knowing what a CEO versus a CFO versus a CIO versus a CTO cares about versus the hiring manager. It's being able to target your message to the right audience at the time, and it's related to how to sell. These are the non-technical skills. The skills for the cloud architect are those network and the data center skills, but it's not programming. It's not scripting. It's not hands-on configuration. It is design. What systems will solve what business problems? That is what we do, Vishal, all design. So being an architect is a really, really great job. I've loved it. I've done it for decades. There's no better job than I know than interacting with the client and asking about their business and making their business perform better. It's like the greatest thing ever. I love it. So, I get excited when I talk about it because I've helped transform many customers' businesses. And what an experience that is. So I absolutely love it. So just letting you know, that's the reason. So those are the skills that you should have. Vishal, what prerequisites should you learn to learn cloud architecture? And that's a great question. Well, you should learn networking and you should learn the data center. So what is networking? You go to Cisco, learn about routing protocols, BGP, OSPF, switching, which means, how switches work, the MAC address tables, the CAM tables, the way they forward things, VLANs, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, 802.1x, 802.1q, ISL trunks, as well as any type of other VLAN trunking protocols, ether channel, port channel, link aggregation groups, IP addressing, route summarization. These are just some of those things on the networking side. Ethernet versus other WAN-related technologies, software-defined networking, all that's prerequisite. Servers, virtualization, containers, firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, storage area networks, all that is prerequisites. ROI modeling is a prerequisite. Delivering a presentation is a good one as a prerequisite. Being able to present in front of an audience of 5,000 people is a prerequisite. Being able to close big deals sales-wise is a prerequisite. Having good sales skills. ROI modeling is a prerequisite. So it's so much related to the business side of it. And the ability, and here's one of probably the biggest thing we do as architects. We translate. 2/3 of my career was a translator, an executive that wants to increase top line revenue by XYZ%, or increase employee productivity from 700,000 per employee dollars to 730,000, and going back and translating that to what does it need, what systems you're going to use to eke out that extra employee performance. That's the goal. That's what you need to learn. So design, customer service, sales, presentations, leadership, those are the prerequisite skills. Note, half are non-technical. And why am I saying that half that are non-technical and I keep emphasizing the technical? The certification providers would have you think that you can just study and get certified and get hired, but the answer is you won't. And the reason people won't is the architects are not configuring jobs. The certification training is the name of the service and how to configure it, but we don't configure anything, we design. So you can and will get hired and you'll be paid beyond anything you've ever dreamed in your entire life if you become a good architect and focus on all these business things. And I want you all to be so successful. So that's why I do so much myth busting. I do so much work to show you how to get hired, what we hiring managers want, how I've done well over 25 years, and how my students have done so well, because I want you to get hired and really, really have a great career. Because let me tell you, when I left engineering and went to architecture, and engineering is a great job too, but when I found architecture, I found my home, and it was the best thing ever. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. B2D.1, really interested in architecture and security. Do we have a program that caters to both? B2D.1, it's interesting you mentioned that. So in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, we basically teach everyone networking to the level somewhere between the CCNA and CCNP. Everybody that graduates from our program has CISSP level security architect knowledge, and of course we teach cloud computing. Now we do recommend that someone finds a specialty. Either either architecture with networking or architecture with security. And the reason we do that in our program is we like to see people get an extra area of specialty or focus because it increases the opportunities they have and it makes them stand out above others. So BD point one, in your program, if you were one of our students, we'd have a career development program for you, and you'd build out a roadmap in the first assignment or two. And on there, we would list some security things, some network security things that you would do. So by the time you graduate, you'd be an expert on network security and cloud computing, and you would get cloud hired in the role that you want. So the answer is yes, it's part of our career development program. We work with everybody to find a specialty. Some people, it's industry knowledge. Some people, it's things like security or networking. Some people, it could be network security. Other people, it could be different kinds of security, but we always find that kind of specialty. And yes, our program caters heavily to both. My CCIE number is 7417. That's how long I've been in networking. I maintained a CISSP for almost a decade. Everybody at Cisco had one. So I did it too. Why did every systems engineer at Cisco, like 10,000 of us, get CISSPs one week? Why was Cisco so concerned about us all becoming CISSPs and having it on our resumes? Because security goes into every architecture and they wanted to know we were solid there. So that's the reason why. So that's why we did what we did. We do what we do, and yes, we cover it in every course. And if you'd like to work with us, we'd love to work with you, and we'll definitely get you solid on those two aspects. And Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Leonard Lash, oh, it's so good to see your name. How do you answer this question in an interview? How much do you expect to be paid for this role? Well, Leonard, generally speaking, I try to avoid that question in the interview and say, well, why don't we just do the interview now and we can always figure that out on the back end. But if you can't get our way around that, it's best to say my current role pays me just under, or is paying me around $250,000 per year. I expect to be paid somewhere in the same range, but what I'm really looking for is a place where I can find a long-term career, where I can make the company successful, and I'll be very happy. So definitely try to avoid that question until after the fact. Try to divert it. Try and say, really what I'm looking for is to find the perfect company where I'm going to be happy, where I can make a big difference in that company. Why don't we do the interview, and perhaps afterwards we can talk about it. And if they push you, just say I'm currently earning 250 or 300 or whatever you're earning as a cloud architect or a junior cloud architect or solution architect at the time, and just say, there's that. Now, if you're career transitioning, and I'm pretty sure that's your case, Leonard, because I know you, I would just say, and if you have no choice, just say, average salary for someone of my background experience is X, and you'd like to be somewhere in that range. So do your research ahead of time, have all your stuff done, be able to show why you're better, Leonard. And in your case, you'll be able to talk about the additional training you've done in communication skills training, executive presence, and leadership training, and all those other things, which will really increase your value. Statistically speaking, soft skills training, which is a big component of our program, which you're a student, has an impact of about 30% on someone's salary. For the average cloud architect, that's about $55,000 a year, just soft skills training. And emotional intelligence training is worth, on average, about $30,000 in an average career. So that's about $80,000 a year of an improvement by focusing on those two things, which we have a lot of focus on, Leonard, which really means about $2.5 million over the course of the next 30 years, just by focusing on these two things. So what I would say is try to avoid the question, dance around it. Let them know that you're very interested in working there, and your biggest concern is finding a company where you can make very successful and you'll be happy long term. And if you have no choice, come up with the average salary or whatever you're getting, and then you should be in good shape. And that's how I've always answered those questions, Leonard, and it's never been a problem. And that's how most of my students have used it, and they've done well over the years. Especially my career transitioners, or especially my people that have already been an architect and now they're going to a distinguished architect role. Sometimes you just can't get around it. Sometimes you have to say, I'm being paid this. Currently, I'd like to be in the same range, but I'm most concerned about finding a company where I can make a big difference and I can be very happy long-term, because I'm looking to build a long-term partnership. Good question there, Leonard. Very strong question. Michelle, what is the average and highest salary of a cloud architecture? Michelle, I'd say average is about 150, is about 160. A good architect will get every day offers from between $300,000 to $450,000 as a cloud architect. Now, Vishal, what is the difference between a $120,000 architect and a $400,000 architect? It's not your technical capability. It has nothing to do with it at that point. It's all your business knowledge. It's all your business acumen. It's all your communication skills. It's all your leadership skills. So the difference from 120 to 220, 50% of that is tech and 50% of it is leadership. But going from 200 to 400, it's all leadership. It's all business acumen. It's all executive presence. So there's almost no limit to how much you can actually earn as a good architect. There are huge hard limits on how much we can earn in engineering, because the key is at some point, we're just not making any more money for the company. But a good architect, Vishal, can literally go out there and close a $500 million deal and bring in $500 million of revenue, of which the organization can make $100 million of profit. So if you paid that architect $1 million to bring in $500 million, I mean, it's nothing. So that's why people that are involved in the sales processes and bringing in large deals are paid a lot. And the architects are one of the highest paid positions for that reason. The closer you are to the sales, the better your business acumen, the better your leadership. I always did really well. In fact, when people told me what they were being paid, I was like, how? And I didn't realize at the time that I kept focusing on the business, the leadership, the business acumen. And that's why my salary was double and triple of everybody else's. And then I started training everybody else in these same skills, and their skills was doubled and tripled too. So the key is, if you're looking for salary, you've got to focus on the business, and some business some more. That's how you do it. Also, I should probably tell everybody that my team at Go Cloud Architects has worked diligently. There's about 30 of us that are making the next version of our AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional Exam Guide. We've added about 250 pages over the first book, and it is going to be available completely for free. It's going to be a gift for the world. In a couple of weeks, we're going to give out completely free. Please register. It's going to be free. The link is in the description below, and we will email it to you when it's ready. Please share this link. We're really excited about it. We want to go out there and do everything we can to help the cloud computing community. We've seen the certification courses that were out there, and we were so saddened that we're making a complete book for you from start to finish, head to toes, nose to toes, any way you want to call it, and it's going to be given out completely free. So please sign up for it. Eldridge, what's the best way to assess personal cloud architecture readiness while studying? What a good question. So here's the thing. I have a really good student. His name is Derek, and I knew Derek was ready when he said this to me. He said, Mike, I had a dream last night. And in my dream, I designed a cloud architecture. I was so happy. He said, I set up 2 direct connections, and I did some BGP load sharing where I sent one subnet over one link and another subnet over another link. So we leveraged both links. And then he described the firewalls, the IDS systems. He described the network access controls, the security groups. He described what he was doing to the servers, how he was disabling unnecessary services and closing down ports and patching and putting anti-malware. And then he talked about the encryption for the storage. And then he talked about IAM. And then he talked about the servers, the load balancers, the containers, the whole strategy. And I went, wow, you're an architect. So Eldridge, here's the thing. You should be able to design any solution. So you should be able to think about how to put your websites together. You should be able to think about how doing the security without thinking about it. You should be able to think about what the DMZs would look like. You should think about know the architectures of 3-tier websites, know the way you would build like data lakes and things like this, know what kind of storage and when to use it, how to use it, where to use it, and why. Then, Eldridge, to know if you're really ready, you should be able to take that design that you've made. Then what you realistically need to do is write it up and then give it to a non-technical person and see if they can read it and understand it. If they can, it's good. Now then, take your design and present it to a non-technical person. If they can explain to you what is the solution, how does the solution work, and how the solution is going to benefit them, and explain what happens, you did it. You're a cloud architect. So Eldridge, you should be able to design things. You should be able to present things, and you should be able to convince people that they need the thing that you've just designed, even if they're not a technology professional. And see, that's the key. So for example, I have my students write things up. When I have my students write up a blog, for example, that I might want to co-author with them, I send them to my chief operating officer to read, not to me. And here's the reason. He's super smart, and he is not a cloud architect. And I don't want someone to read it to be a cloud architect, because if you have to be a cloud architect to understand the design, it's not a good design. So I have him read it. because he's not an architect. So I used to have my wife read things because she practices internal medicine or cardiology, depending upon which year it is. So here, internist, tell me if you can understand my architecture. And when she could, I knew it was good. So I recommend the same thing for you. When you can design it, but you know what, Eldridge? We are going to run a completely free practice interview session. And if you want to be interviewed, you can definitely do this. We're going to do it live. Chris from my team is going to be sending out an email when it's ready, but it's something we're going to be doing very soon. So we will invite you to the Cloud Architect interview if you desire. We're going to send an email to our list and invite certain people. So if you want to desire to be part of that, you can do that, because we're going to be doing a couple of free practice interview sessions in the next month to try and get everybody cloud hired. So I hope I answered your question there too. And Chris, if you know the data that, great. If not, if you just want to bring in the next question. Guess who? What's the best way to transition from software developer to cloud architect? Okay, we actually help a lot of people do this all the time. So guess who? I would say that if you came from a networking or a data center background, it would be easier. But don't worry, you can do it. So the key is, when you're a software person, you have to learn the cloud, which means learning the network and the data center. So we, in some ways, from a software perspective, we start you as if you weren't a technology professional, but you still have so much knowledge about technology, it makes it easier anyway. So the best way to do this is first learn the networking, meaning learning the routing, the switching, the security, which we just told to Vishal. So learn all the networking. Then, when you're transitioning from a software developer, we have something else we have to do. Software developers, and this is not my view, these are really smart people, but the perception is a software developer is someone that sits behind their desk and they code all day long. And you don't let them out in front of people because they don't like to talk to people. That's the perception. I didn't say it was reality. I said that's the perception. So the executives have those perceptions of the coders and the programmers. So when we want to transition someone from an engineering role or a software role, which is engineering, to architecture, we have to do two things. First, we have to teach you the network and the data center, because you've got to have the technical competency. Then we've got to focus on your executive presence and teach you how to communicate like an executive, to teach you how to do some ROI modeling, teach you the way to be relevant to the executives, teach you how to present, teach you how to sell. All those are the skills. Now, we have to rebrand you. So right now you've got a brand, I would assume, as a software developer, which is great, but that's a hardcore tech brand, a brand of someone that sits behind a desk. We have to rebrand you as an executive that also knows technology. So we're going to have to do some publications, perhaps, and all my students do some. We're going to have to do a resume review. We're going to have to do a LinkedIn review. The things that you have on your resume that are really technical, we're going to untechnical them, and we're going to show the transformation. So very recently, I had a really good student, technical genius. If you could ever think of a really good engineer, that was this guy. And this guy came to me, and he came from India, moved to Canada, and he was going to be an architect. And he came and he's like, Mike, I just want to learn these engineering things. And I said to him, if you learn these engineering things, I can get you a cloud engineering job. And he says, no, I want to be an architect, but I'm learning these. And I said, architects don't learn these things. And he went on 5 or 6 cloud architect interviews. And he said, Mike, they keep asking about my coding. They keep asking about this. I said, why don't they ask me about architecture? I said, your resume shows you're a software developer. I said, you will always be asked software questions until we tune your resume. So then here's what we did. We took his resume, we took all the coding off, and where he had, web application, we talked about designed web application that made website, we talked about the business metrics that it had. We talked about the business transformation. We got all rid of the tech. We talked about awards. We talked about metrics. We talked about efficiency going up by 11% or expenses going down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, mind you, this person didn't even work in tech for the last 3 years. They worked in tech, and then they worked at like Home Depot or something for 3 years. And then they got their first cloud architect job, and it was no big deal. And it was instant after we fixed the resume. What do we have to do to the resume and the LinkedIn profile? We had to show the leadership. We had to show the transformation. We had to show some communication. We had to show some documents that were written. We took all that certification stuff and we buried it in there. And we only showed like the Google Professional Cloud Architects and the big certifications, and we hid everything else. we built the brand of an architect. And as soon as the hiring manager saw it, they went, oh my God, I need this person on my team. And this person was hired for what they said was 300% higher than they've ever earned in their life. So here's the key. You can transition and be very, very successful, and I encourage you to do so. These architecture careers are among the best in the world. But part of it is realizing that you have to be branded. We all have a brand, which is why I say, hey, if you want to be an architect, don't study sysops because it kills your brand. If you want to be an architect, don't study DevOps, study architecture. If you want to be a DevOps engineer, study DevOps, not architecture, because architecture doesn't help the DevOps brand. The brand of someone that likes to sell is not the same brand as someone that's going to automate. So make sure you build your brand. So that's the two things. It's first getting the skills. We talked about how to do that. Then it's about optimizing your brand. We could easily help you do that, or you can find somebody that's good at branding, like a PR person, but just make sure you've got that. That's how you make the transition, and you will be very, very successful. My software developers do it all the time. They get great jobs, and they are very happy, and you can get cloud hired too, easily. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Daniel Green. Would you consider an AWS Lambda service a form of vendor locked in? Absolutely not. So I think Lambda functions are great. Lambda functions are a simple thing. Hey, you got an S3 bucket, it's open, remediate it. That's not vendor lock in. Where do people get vendor locked in? If they recode everything to work on DynamoDB, they're locked in. If they code everything to run in Aurora Serverless, they're locked in. Anytime you go pure serverless, you're locked in. But little simple functions like Lambda functions is just code you can put anywhere. So, it's one thing to run a serverless application, and that's risky. Because if you refactor your apps to go to the cloud, and then the cloud provider raises your rates, you're in trouble. Or if you code everything to go to the cloud, and then the cloud provider says, I don't like your business, you're kicked out, you're bankrupt. So, I'm not against serverless. I think serverless is great. I think serverless is transformative, but I am all about business continuity planning, and I'm all about making sure that you can go from one provider to the others. So I use vendor interoperable things. When I design networks, I don't use the routing protocol EIGRP. Cisco made a brilliant routing protocol called EIGRP. It had some of the best features and functionalities of a link state protocol and the simplicity of a distance vector protocol. But here's the thing. It was Cisco proprietary and it only worked on Cisco. So even when I worked on Cisco, I never used it. Why? Because what happens when there's a Juniper router or a Fortinet firewall? I need it all to work. And I can't build the system that'll never work unless I only have one vendor stuff, because that's ridiculous. So I don't consider AWS Lambda a problem, because you can take that Lambda code and stick it on any cloud provider and it's going to work. I'm talking more of these serverless, major serverless environments. So no, that's not vendor lock-in, and everybody's using Lambda functions. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. VNHG. Is there high turnover when working as a solution architect for the big three cloud providers? High turnover, the answer is no. One of the cloud providers people tend to go to very frequently and tend to leave very frequently. I have not heard that from the other two cloud providers at all. Having said all of that, there are a lot better places for you to work than just the three cloud providers as a cloud architect. There are big banks that hire cloud architects that pay them unbelievable amounts of money. For example, there are global retailers that hire cloud architects. There are system integrators and managed service providers that do them. There are big four consulting companies. So the point is, there are an incredible number of jobs. One of the cloud computing companies tends to have a higher turnover than the rest, but everybody comes in, comes out. People work really hard, but I wouldn't say there's high turnover in the three cloud providers. I would say all in all, it's an incredibly great career, and people are very, very, very happy in their careers. But if you find a company and the culture doesn't work for you, and maybe you join a company and they're very cheap, for example, or they're very selfish, they have a certain attitude or a certain way, they only allow a certain kind of population. If you're not happy there, go somewhere else. But otherwise, there's lots and lots and lots of them, and there's no shortage of incredible employers here. So don't worry about the turnover. EWB_AB4D. Do you have access to your prior students who transition to cloud architects? I mean, if they want to talk to you, sure. I occasionally have students reach out to them, but I don't provide anybody's phone number, just like I wouldn't provide phone number to you. I wouldn't provide your phone number. That wouldn't be fair. I will tell you, is it next Friday or the Friday after that, that Ian, one of my graduates that's working in as a cloud architect, is going to come on our YouTube channel and share our experiences. And if you're one of our students and you join our calls, lots of our graduates that are working still attend our calls. The answer is yes, but I don't provide people's phone numbers out. I don't provide my team's phone numbers out. I don't provide your phone numbers out. So I don't think that it would be appropriate. Now, if you're in the career development program, you have access to the Slack channel, and you can reach out to any of our current and past students that will happily bring people with them for a job. One of my people that's working for a phone company in Canada has been trying to bring half of my students with them, and I'm very grateful for that. So, the point is yes, you have access to them in the program, but it's not like I'm going to give people's phone numbers out and say, call them. So, and the only reason I'm saying this is someone asked, can I speak to 10 of your students? And I said, who are you? And they said, I want to speak to your students. And I said, are you willing to have my students call you? And he said, of course not. I said, so I wouldn't put you in the same position. So the answer is, if you're in our program, sure, you'll interact with all of our current students and some of our past as well. And some of them will be more than willing to help you. I just don't provide phone numbers out to people because I don't think that's appropriate. Unless it's somebody, a recruiter, that reaches out to me that says, I want to hire one of your students, which happens every day. And then I call the student and say, are you interested? If the student says yes, then I submit the student's resume to the recruiter. That I do. But I have to be clean. I just can't. I have to respect people's privacy. Because some people are in my program and they don't want their employers to know that they're doing something to change careers too. And I don't want them getting fired out of their current job. So we're very, very, very respectful of people's privacy. I hope you can understand that. Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. Valentine, do I encourage someone who needs Linux for a cloud architect to take the Linux Plus? I don't advise anyone ever to take a CompTIA certification ever, Valentine. So here's the thing. The CompTIA certifications are very good certifications. CompTIA is a totally good organization, but the thing is, when it comes to value, meaning whether the employers desire them or not, the CompTIA certifications have almost no value. So here's the key. I would skip the Linux Plus. Now, the Red Hat certification absolutely is great. So the key is the Red Hat certification, yes. The Red Hat certified engineer, great. The Red Hat certified architect is absolutely great. The Red Hat systems administrator is a fine one, Valentine, as is the CCNA. Those two good ones are good for the cloud architect. Now, the question, Valentine, is do you want to be a DevOps engineer or do you want to be a cloud architect? So if you want to be a DevOps engineer, the Red Hat one is probably still good to do, as would be a Kubernetes certification would be quite nice if you're a DevOps engineer, as would be, obviously learning those DevOps tools. So the key is there's that. So I would always say the Red Hat one is really good, but I stay away from the Network Plus, the A Plus, the Security Plus, and the Linux Plus. Not because they're not certifications, not because they don't have a good level of competence, not because of anything, but because they're not on the CIO's list of certifications that they look for when they're hiring someone. I typically look for those. I look for what recruiters tell me, and I look for what hiring managers tell me. So skip the Linux Plus. And when you come back, the Red Hat certified engineer or the Red Hat, what do you call it, administrator that you have is good. Any kind of things related to containers would be pretty nice for a DevOps engineer, like Kubernetes or OpenShift would be pretty good as well. So keep that in mind on Valentine. And I think you're definitely looking in the right direction for what you want to do. Okay, Chris, if you're back and you want to change the, the videos or the questions. EWB_AB4D. Am I still currently active in cloud design transformation outside of running my training program? Until very recently, I was. And until very recently, I also used to read 3 books per week. Having said that, EWB_AB4D, I don't have the time to do any consulting outside of running this organization. I spend, half of my time as a CEO, and I spend about the other half of my time actually as an instructor. So I'm crossed between running a business and actually teaching students. So I don't have really a chance to do anything. Some days I don't even have a chance to sleep, let alone doing anything else. But, or eat for that matter. But, I love what I do, so it really doesn't take time. So I don't have a chance to really do a lot of work these days with other organizations. I still do consult. Organizations call me, they ask, what do I think about things? Yes, that happens all the time. Architects that are out there constantly call me saying, hey, Mike, what do you think I should do? There's this weird BGP thing or this weird multicast thing. How do I get it through the cloud that doesn't support multicast? So the answer is I still do that. And I still help coach other architects, but it's not like the old days where I would be in, I'd start my day, I'd give a speech in Washington, D.C., then fly to San Jose, give a speech at an executive briefing, and then go to London the next day and Dubai the day after that, Hong Kong the day after that. My weeks don't look like that anymore. My weeks are now, start my days with a phone call with somebody in India at 6 o'clock in the morning, then have some phone calls with some nice folks in Africa, and then some folks with some calls with some people in England, and then the U.S. is awake, and then after the U.S. is awake, and then India wakes back up, and I'm on calls again later at night. So I don't really have the time to do that. I'd say it's been about 6 months since I've had a chance to consult on any projects right now. But, I love what I do, so it's totally fun, and it's still okay. But it's a great question. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. B2D.1, super appreciative. We'll be on our site signing up soon. Love to work with you. Definitely look forward to working with you. Ronald Naza, what's the future of what? So I don't know what you mean by what is the future. Now, if I think, what is the future of DevOps? Does CloudFormation have a place, or is it all Terraform? I don't see CloudFormation templates as valuable or useful at all. I do see Terraform as very useful for the DevOps engineer. But, all this infrastructure as code is for DevOps engineers. It is not for architects. So what do I see as the future? Well, I see more transformation. What technologies transform things? Faster networking, faster servers. I do see microservices and serverless being transformative in the future because of the way that it can actually change things. But really, it's the communications, the collaborations, and the connecting people that I see things. I see voice being a big thing in the future. I see more automation being things in the future. I see our computers and our devices getting much, much, much more personal in the future. And I believe in a whole lot of customization based upon our likes and dislikes. I see a lot of that coming through. These organizations are gathering data from all angles. It's crazy. You go to a website, you even have a phone call. I'm at my buddy's house where he's got an Alexa there. 10 minutes later, we're getting stuff on our phones about things that we're talking about. So that kind of personalized message, that kind of nonstop surveillance, that kind of nonstop listening to you to give you customized messages to sell you stuff, awfully transformational for the business. I'm not sure how transformational they are for us, the users, but I see all of that. Much more data science, much more machine learning, much more computers doing things. That's what I see the future. I don't really see, infrastructure as code to me. That's not a future. That's a way to be optimal in how you deploy things, but that's not transformational. That just, helps people build stuff faster. So that to me is making a construction crew more efficient. It's another tool, but shaping how you receive information. Can you get it via voice? Can you get it on a phone? Can you get it via something that's in your ears? That's transformational. Can you get it so personalized that you can only see what you want and not what you want? That's transformational. Access to accurate information, access to decision support, that's transformational. Transformational is when I go into the office to see a patient, practice medicine for the day. When that person comes in, I know everything about them, what they tell me, as well as other things that I don't even know about yet. So I have better information to make better decisions. That's transformational. And if I can aggregate all their medical records from every other doctor they've ever seen, so I don't miss any medications, that's transformational. So it's the access to information, it's the sharing of the information, better decision support. When a patient came in, Ronald, there's a rule in medicine that says, generally speaking, when someone has 2 or more complaints on a visit, they're probably crazy. No, I mean that. I'm not joking. We're literally taught in school, if someone has 3 or more complaints, they're almost definitely crazy. 2 or more complaints, probably crazy. So what happens when someone's sick? They have 2 or more complaints because they're sick and they're being written off as crazy. So if when that patient came in and there was some information that was given to the doctor that shows the doctor, oh, wait, we found something in their lungs. We found something in their belly. We found something in their diet that's not right. make a decision, help your patient right now, we could do things. So in the future, better communications, better collaboration, better decision support, better artificial intelligence. That's what I see. Things like Terraform, that's just how our engineers are going to build it faster. I don't really see that as transformational, but I do see that as definitely a way to improve the way we live, work, and play. So I guess it's somewhat transformational for the user's job, but not industry transformational like the things that we're talking about as an architect. How much request is for cloud-related jobs, and how much can you earn based upon experience in US and Europe, and does certification affect your salary? Okay, great question. So the answer is, how much can you earn? I will tell you that at Ronald, I get a $300,000 to $500,000 a year cloud architect job every single day of the week without looking for it. Somebody give me 1 to 3 offers every single day for that in the US. Does certifications affect your salary? Yes. If you're a CCIE, that will have an impact on your salary. If you're a certified solution architect professional, that will have an impact on your salary. But Ronald, I want to be clear. There's some really good research that was done by Global Knowledge, and they found that certifications can increase your salary up to $10,000. Okay. Now, similar research shows that studying soft skills raises your salary $50,000. And similar research shows that improving your emotional intelligence raises your salary an additional $30,000. So by training your soft skills and emotional intelligence, you can build yourself about an $80,000 a year boost to your salary like nothing. You can probably double that or triple that. But by getting certified, maybe you add $5,000 to $10,000 to your overall salary. So when it comes to actually getting more certifications, certification is the worst way to raise your salary. So I don't recommend it. I recommend that you get the certifications to get hired. What are they? It's based upon your career, but the minimum level is the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional for AWS. It's the Azure Expert, or it's the Google Professional Cloud Architect based upon the cloud you want to work on. Then we recommend a professional certification, not another cloud cert. The reason we don't want the cloud cert is there's 1,000,001 10x AWS certified people that don't know anything about anything. And because right now I could literally take anybody off the street. I could literally find someone that worked in a veterinary office. I could buy them a practice exam and get them certified as an AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional within a week. I could do it with 100% certainty to 99% of the population. These certifications don't mean that much for that reason, because it's so easy to get a cheat copy of the exam and pass it. So the cloud certs don't mean that much. So you need that Certified Solution Architect Professional or that Azure Expert or something to get your minimum level. And then beyond that, you need an industry cert. CCNP or CCIE for networking, for security like a CISSP or a CEH Master or a CCSP, something good from industry that's going to separate you from the rest. If you like databases, an Oracle professional cert, something that makes you different than the rest. That's how you build your technical competency. But here's the thing that affects your salary. It's your soft skills. It's your presentation skills. It's your leadership skills. That can make a $200,000 a year difference in your salary. Certifications will make a $5,000 or $10,000 difference in your salary. So where are you going to spend your time and effort? If you're one of my students, we'll get you certified to the Certified Solution Architect Professional, maybe a CCNP or a CISSP in security. And we're going to say that's enough tech. The way we're going to make you make more, the way we're going to build your career, the way you're going to become a distinguished architect or a principal architect or a thought leader is you're going to be an expert on one thing. Maybe an expert on cloud architectures for banking, maybe an expert on cloud architectures for healthcare, maybe cloud network architectures, maybe cloud security architectures, maybe big data architect. That's how you build a portfolio. That's how you stand out from the crowd, and that's how you get paid a lot. So that's what we do, and that's what we do with the students in our program. But regarding cloud-related jobs, if you're capable, you will get 3 to 10 job offers per day without even looking for them. TNT event planning. How does recertification work after 3 years? You just take a very simple basic test, which is real easy to do the second time around because you've already learned it the first place, and it's stuff that you do every day. Kamal Sharma, what are the main prerequisite skills for a non-tech person to get into the cloud? Guess what, Kamal Sharma? The same ones for tech people. And they are as follows: emotional intelligence, excellent communication skills, business acumen or ROI modeling skills. And if you don't have that, learn it. You must be able to give a presentation. You must have CXO relevancy training, meaning you need to know what the CEO cares about versus the CIO versus the CTO versus the CFO, and you must have the ability to deliver a different relevant presentation for each one. You need to be able to ask a million, and you need to be able to interview a client. You need to be able to ask about their business, find about their business pain points, find about their business goals, find about their challenges, find about what their competitors are doing, and then being able to design things. So then the skills, Kamal, are networking and data center technologies such as BGP, OSPF, VLANs, rapid spanning tree, port channel, ether channel, link aggregation groups, VLANs, 802.1q tagging, private lines, IPsec, SSL, DNS, ARP, and all those other networking type things, NAT. And then when it comes to the cloud, you're still dealing with the data center technology, server virtualization, containers, firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, load balancers, DNS, well, we mentioned DNS, Active Directory, Radius servers, any type of AAA authentication, authorization accounting, also known as IAM or identity and access management, and et cetera, et cetera. So those are really the things that you can do. And Kamal Sharma, you can do it. Kamal Sharma, I work with non-tech people and we transition them to be cloud architects every day of the week. Kamal Sharma, I practiced internal medicine before moving into tech. And within 6 months of the design time I said I wanted to work in tech, I was the lead architect on my team. So Kamal Sharma, it's easy to do. What I mean by easy, if you dedicate the time, you dedicate the effort, and you focus, and you don't quit until you win. And I mean it, literally speaking. I locked myself in a room for 4 days, became a CCNA, locked myself in a room, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day for a couple of months, and poof, next thing you realize I'm an industry leader in another career. So it can be done. It's not that big of a deal. Now, are those couple of months going to be hard? Yeah. Are you going to work real hard? Yeah. Are you going to get frustrated 2 or 3 times and say, this is really hard? I don't know if I'm ready for this. Yes. But if you stay strong and you fight and you keep going, I promise you, you will win. And you will not only get a career, you will be so happy in it. It will pay you well. And you'll look back and say, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. So the answer is yes. But the prerequisite skills really are the ability to communicate well, the ability to listen well. The most important skill for the architect is not their technical abilities. It is their communication skills. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. Go design me the ideal cloud architecture. None of you can do it. Why? You don't know anything about my business. How are you going to find out about my business? You're going to ask, what's my business about? How does the business make money? What's its main expenses? What's its main competition? What's the growth rate? What is my desired growth rate? Where are we struggling? How do you design it? You didn't ask the questions. You can't. And if you don't have those communication skills, you can't ask the questions. So it's not just communication skills, it then becomes listening skills. I got to tell you, the biggest skill is listening. You ask the client an open-ended question, and you know where people go wrong? They don't listen. In other words, you need to just wait. You need to hear what the client tells you. So ask an open-ended question and listen. So I would say active listening and good communication skills are the 2 biggest prerequisites. And for those that don't have them, we train them. But I got to tell you, Kamal Sharma, you want to be a great cloud architect, you want any of these careers, you want a career transition, your communication skills matter. Now, Kamal Sharma, when we transition careers, or when you get a new one, nobody's going to hire anybody from getting a bunch of certifications. Here's why. Certifications don't prove competency. Kamal Sharma, let's talk about these cloud certifications. They teach you the name of the service and how to configure them, which is great if your job is configuring things. But we cloud architects are system designers. We don't configure anything. We go start with the client, ask them about their business, and design a solution to improve the business. We don't touch anything. We don't touch the tech. So the certification training is all about touching the tech, which we don't do. So it's not relevant for us. So what is relevant is the ability to know how to design. And what do we need to know about? We need to know about the network and the data center. Why? Because that's the stuff we're taking to the data center from the cloud. You know what the cloud is? It's just another data center. So what we do, Kamal, is we take stuff from one data center and we move it to the cloud, which is a new data center. So we need to know those networking and data things, but you can do it. Why else do I keep saying soft skills, emotional intelligence, executive presence? Well, there's 2 reasons. See, let's say, Kamal, you've been working as a cloud architect for 30 years and you're the best in the world. Well, I send you an interview. You're going to get hired. You've been working with 30 years and you're the best in the world. You're getting hired. But now, Kamal, let's say you're really smart. because I'm sure you are. And you studied really hard and you're really competent, and I'm sure you're good. Now you're going on this interview. Now you've got somebody that's got 10 years experience. It's not that solid, but they've got 10 years experience. And you're very solid, but you've got no experience. So you're more competent than the 10-year experienced person. But now it's still a competition because they've got experience and you don't. So now you deliver a perfect interview and they love you. Your communication skills are so good. They ask you some questions and you're straight to the point, crisp, and you're really, really likable. You've got the perfect attitude. You know exactly what the hiring managers want because we taught you, and you answer every question perfectly. Now you're a 90 out of 100 on an interview. And that person that's acceptably good with 10 years experience is a 60 out of 100, and you win and you get hired and you get paid more. So the key, Kamal Sharma, when you're transitioning careers is to be the most likable person in the world. Just be so likable. And after they're likable, you'll be in good shape. So these are what we're talking about. So that's what it's going to take. And you can get hard and you can do really, really great. So that's what I suggest. EWB for A, B for D. What are the top 3 soft skills that made me successful? Well, I'm actually going to do better than that. I remember when I worked as an engineer at one of the world's best tech companies in the world. My manager called me in my office, and we're going back 20 some years. And he says, Mike, he says, do you know the difference between a $100,000 a year engineer and a $300,000 a year engineer? And I was like, tell me. I said, I need to know. And my manager was willing to talk. And I listened. I took about 50 pages of notes. My manager then says, and what happened is I got pulled into a room. My manager says, you're not like the rest of my people. He said, they're all techies. He said, you're just this techie. He said, but you don't talk like them. You don't walk like them. You don't present like them. You don't dress like them. So you don't want to know the difference between a $100,000 engineer and a $300,000? Yeah, tell me. And he says, it's your gravitas. It's your executive presence. It's your emotional intelligence. And I said, huh? And he said, look, he said, I saw you in front of that customer. You walked to that customer and they were frustrated. You asked a couple of open-ended questions, and 5 minutes later, you're buying the customer lunch and they're loving you. He said, that skill, he said, get better on that. And he sent me to training. Now, he said, the next thing, he says, Mike, he said, you're a good leader. He said, I'm watching you manage a team of 20 people and you're good. He said, but what's going to happen if you need 200 or 2,000 people to help you? And I said, well, I don't know how anybody can do that. He said, we need to increase your area of influence. So I was sent to training called exercising influence. And exercising influence, which is the ability to ethically persuade people to want to do their jobs, is a very, very, very critical skill for a manager or an architect, especially because you're going to be managing teams of 20 to 50 people that don't work for you, which means you can't discipline them and still need to get the job done. So I'd say the ability to exercise influence is really critical. Robert Cialdini did the most work on that. I took some thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars of training for that. And let me tell you, it made a difference. The next place where I'd say between my company and I, where I've invested, $25,000 to $50,000, which made a big difference, was actually presentation skills. I've easily spent between $25,000 and $50,000 learning presentation skills. And I got to tell you, it easily had a 6-figure impact on my career every year for the rest of my life. So I would say the ability to exercise influence, the ability to present. And the last one is your emotional intelligence or your empathy. The ability to see things from another perspective, the ability to take someone that's frustrated and raise the energy of their room, the ability to take a customer that's unhappy and turn them into a satisfied customer, and the ability to basically go through an organization and improve it because of emotional intelligence. I'd say they're your 3 biggest, highest value targets. I'd say if a good technology professional can master them, that could easily make $150,000 impact on their salary every year for the rest of their life, which could easily be about $4.5 million over the course of a 30-year career. So they are your high-value targets to play with. Getting an 11th or a 10th or a 9th or an 8th AWS certification, no increase in your salary. If anything, it's going to decrease your salary because it's going to make you look like a jack of all trades and a master of none. Become great. Become communicative, become a great leader. Wow. good things are going to be coming to you and great, exciting things. So those are the recommendations that I have for maximizing your career. It did it for me, and it did it for so many graduates over the course of the last 20 years. Miss Lamon Jamin. Wow, you look like that graphic looks like Eva. So another one of my students. How do I get around the 10 years requirement on job description for cloud architects when you're coming from a non-tech background? Miss Lamon Jamin, every job description for every job for the last 20 years has always said we want 10, 20 years experience. In fact, when you look at these jobs, they want 10 years experience and technologies that haven't even existed in 10 years. I don't worry about job descriptions at all. Job descriptions are totally irrelevant to me. I have never met any job description requirement in my entire life. And yet I've interviewed at 5 companies and I've been hired by every single company that I've interviewed at. Here's what happens. I, the hiring manager, say I need a cloud architect. Now, I tell HR I'm hiring a cloud architect. Somebody in HR that knows absolutely zero about technology is going to go write a job description. They're going to go to Indeed, they're going to go to ZipRecruiter, and they're going to find some stupid job description that's 50 pages long that's going to include every single career other than architecture. It'll have scripting, it'll have DevOps, it'll have coding, it'll have Java, it will have Node.js, Geo, it will have everything other than any kind of tech whatsoever. So that's what we're going to see. So the answer to that is yes, that's what we've got. So there's that. And then why is this? Why is HR writing up these stupid irrelevant job descriptions? Miss Lamon Jamin, I need you to understand the problem. HR gets 3,000 applications for a horrible company like a cable company that nobody considers high performance, like the kind that have the worst customer service in the industry. And they get about 5,000 applications or more for a good company that people want to work at, a high performance company. So HR has no choice but to basically come up with these stupid job descriptions that want 30 years experience in a technology that's existed for 4 years, 10 Olympic gold medals. And then here's what happens. You apply for these stupid jobs, HR auto rejects you. And then here's what happens. The hiring manager gets sent 10 or 20 candidates that are jack of all trades and master of none. The hiring manager can't hire anyone, Miss Lamon Jamin, because everybody they've interviewed knows nothing about the tech. They're jack of all trades and a master of none. So then what does the hiring manager do? They say, I can't hire any of these HR people. They call their favorite tech recruiter, like mine is typically Christina Marino or Steve Aracrillian in New York. And then I call Christina and I say, Christina, I need a cloud architect that knows cloud architecture. I need someone that's emotionally intelligent, someone that presents themselves well. And she says, guess what? I've got somebody for you. This person, Ned, I'm going to send you Ned. So I go interview Ned. Ned delivers a perfect interview. I tell Ned I'm going to hire them. Then I call HR and say, hey, guess what, HR? I'm going to make an offer for Ned. I then tell Ned that you have to go fill in the job application. Ned then fills in the job application. I get his offer back from, from HR. I give Ned the job, and 6 months later, Ned's going to get an auto rejection from HR. Sorry, you don't meet the requirements to work here, but it doesn't matter because Ned's been there and he's been hired and he's been promoted. I don't care what's on a job description. I care what the hiring managers want. We speak to hiring managers every day of the week. We speak to recruiters every day of the week, and our students get hired every single day of the week without experience, and no one cares. They care about competency. Who are you going to hire? The 14-year-old that can hack into the Pentagon, or the person that's been working in network security for 20 years that can't hack into anything? The 14-year-old, the one that can do it. So we hire competency, and then we hire based on attitude, energy, enthusiasm, willingness to work, team playerness, willingness to go above and beyond. That's what we care. Don't worry about what's in the job description. I've never met a job description in my entire life. None of my graduates ever have, and they've all gotten hired. So don't worry about things that are trivial. Worry about things that matter, and you'll be in good shape. Don't apply for a job. But also, Ms. Lamon Jamin, the key is you need to build yourself a really good recruiter network. A really good recruiter network, because you interact with the recruiter sends you to the hiring manager, and you skip all the HR drama in the first place. So, make sure you build a good recruiter network. We have well over 300 recruiters we use for our students, and that's how we bypassed HR. We don't stop at HR. HR are good people, they're educated people, but they're really horrible if it's your first tech job because they aren't technology professionals. HR are really good at their role. What is the HR role? To find people that fit into an organization's culture. But they can't gauge your technology professional on a basis. So they just put a bunch of roadblocks down, which ultimately lets jack of all trades get through, which ultimately means people that can't do the job. So don't worry about the job. master the job, master the skills, and you'll get hired. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. For a person that finishes your program, do you help with resumes? Of course we do. We do resume guidance and interview guidance and salary negotiation guidance. Of course we do. We are a full program. We take the person, we start with building a plan based upon their ultimate goal. Then we make sure the person executes the plan. Then we teach the person how to interview. We optimize the resume. We optimize the branding. And then we get you hired by calling our recruiters once you're ready. So yes, we have to cover all of that. No program that doesn't cover, interviewing or all those components would ever be effective at getting you a first job. And especially when you're changing careers, you've got to get your resume. Now, 4 pages may not be bad if it's the right 4 pages. So the question is, it's not the length of the resume that we're talking about. It's the relevancy. It's the transformation. It's showing the organization that you are the right fit. And that may be very, 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 very different than, Very, very different than some other thing. So, okay, Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. Shujoki, you're currently in the process of getting your Google IT support. This is your only knowledge in tech. Do you know how employers will use it? You don't know. So I don't see any employers that are going to be doing any hiring for that. And I really feel bad about saying it. So here's the thing. You've got to figure out what is it that you want to do. So you want to, with regards to support, getting a certificate that says you know how to do support is very different than knowing how to do support. So, I think it's a good start. Maybe you get your Google IT support. Then maybe you do a Google Cloud Engineer. Then maybe you take it up one level and become a Google Professional Cloud Architect. So basically, by doing it that way, you're increasing the capabilities and the status of everything you're doing along the way. So let's say there's that. So you could do that. Now at the same time, focus on your communication skills, your interview skills, your acumen, and that could work. So the key for you is, instead of just taking a certification and then hoping you can get a job, tell me what job you actually desire, and I can help you get there, and I'll give you a plan. But just chasing a certification and assuming it's going to relate to a job really doesn't do that. So I do want to help you, and I can definitely guide you, and I can help you find any kind of job you want if you tell me what job you want. But we have to determine the job we want first. And then after we know the job we want, then we can figure out the certifications that are going to help you get there. But just starting with the certification and hoping we can get hired, that's it's kind of doing it backwards. And, with the support certification, there's not a lot to it. So the key is, tell me what your goal is and I'll tell you how to get there, because this cloud space is wonderful. I want you to have the best job. I want you to have the best career. And, all in all, I just want you to be successful. Leon, is cloud computing harder than security? No, it's the same. The key, let's face it, in the cloud, you have to do security. The cloud is not more secure than the data center. It's the same, if not less. So on the cloud, we have to do just as much security. So here's the thing. I think cloud's simple. Why is the cloud simple to me? I've been working in networking and data stuff forever. So for me, the cloud's the easiest place in the world. Then again, I've worked in security. So security is pretty easy to me. I can tell you right now, I'm going to start with content delivery network with some DDoS protection to secure a web app. And then I'll probably use a next generation firewall. And if it's not a next generation firewall, I'll use an IDS IPS system behind it, which I'd probably use like a network access list and then a security group. And then I'd lock down my servers, install some anti-malware protection, disable unnecessary services, patch them, for example, encrypt all my storage. All that security, whether you're a cloud architect that knows how to do it or a security architect, you still need to do the same security. So it's not which one is harder. I say get which one is better for you. What do you like more? I'd say combine them. If you're going to be doing security, you're going to be doing cloud security. Let's face it, everything's going to the cloud. So if you want to do security and go ahead and do it. And if you want to do cloud, do it. And if you want to do cloud security, just realize it's going to be on the cloud and off the cloud. So you're always going to be on the cloud. So you're going to have to learn the cloud no matter what. So don't assume you can get away with getting out of the cloud. So learn the cloud and security, and you'll be great, 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 great. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Black and gold one. How do you overcome credibility limitations caused by biases? I don't know what kind of biases you're actually referring to, meaning biases like you were a software engineer, but not an architect, or biases that you used to be a DevOps engineer, and now you want to be an architect. So you have to tell me what you mean by biases, and I'll happily help you. But here's the thing. People inherently do have biases. For example, tall people make more money than short people. This is crazy. So in fact, if you look at all the elections in the history, the tall person won, at least presidential elections in the US, the tall person won almost every time except for 3 or 4 times the shorter person won. So theoretically, people have biases. How do you beat people's biases? You become better. So for example, if people assume that an engineer is going to have Coke bottle thick glasses and not be able to communicate, can we learn to communicate well? And there's no biases. So, I don't really know what people mean by biases. We all have our own inherent things, but like if tall people make more money than short people, stand up straight. So, I wish I knew exactly what you meant. I'd love to answer them, but the key is, always be better, always be great, always have such a good attitude that the world loves you. And whatever biases they had about anything, pretty much just melt away. People tell me that people are unreasonable. I've heard this my entire life. This person's hard to deal with. They're crazy. They're unreasonable. I want to go talk to them. They're not unreasonable at all. They're not unreasonable at all. It's just that they've had a problem and no one's ever listened to them. And you finally listen to someone. So, I don't exactly know what you mean by that, but I would say just be so good. Just be so good that in the end, you're better than everybody else, and being better wins. You can never get faulted for being better. And whatever biases people have, in the end, results win, results matter. So just be great at whatever you do. Be really likable. Make sure you're great and likable with a good attitude, and it'll melt away whatever biases we're even talking about. And I don't know what kind of biases we're talking about, but just be great. And in the end, people love greatness. So that's what I recommend. So Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. Zelma, oh my God, it's so good to see you. You're trying to start the solution architect training, but was wondering where do you go practice the work because you're going based off my SAA book. So, Zelma, where do you're training to be an architect, and architects don't configure. But if you want to configure it, and I strongly recommend you do so, simply go create an AWS free tier account. It'll be completely free. Set up a budget first and set it for $10 or some ridiculously small thing. And that way, if you get the $5, if you were to spend $5, you'll get an email. Personally, I've done lab after lab after lab after lab after lab on AWS, and I've never paid a penny to do so. So that's where I would do the AWS stuff, Selma. But of course, you're in our program. And of course, you're going to be building an OpenStack cloud too. So you can do these things on the OpenStack cloud too. And when you're at it, if you want to connect your OpenStack cloud to the Active Directory server you're going to build, I strongly recommend you do it. And heck, if you want it, Zelma, you can connect your OpenStack cloud to the AWS cloud, the Google cloud, and the Azure cloud. And I strongly recommend it. It would be a great way for you to create a multi-cloud environment while you're in our career development program off of the cloud you built on our servers. And you know what? With OpenStack Ansible, you can even provision the Google cloud and the AWS cloud directly off of your own servers. So it'll be really cool and really fun. So that's how I would do it. That's exactly how I would do it. Ms. Laman Jamin, how long into our cloud architect career should we start trying to specify a cloud specialty? Good question. For example, cloud architect infrastructure versus cloud network. Well, cloud and infrastructure architect versus cloud network is pretty much the same job, Ms. Laman Jamin. But here's the thing. I would start from the beginning. What is it you want to learn? So, for example, when I learned healthcare, I knew I wanted to work in internal medicine or cardiology, but I still had to learn medicine first. So in the process of learning medicine, those of us that want a specialty, we just focus a little more effort on something else. So while you're doing your training, if you want to do cloud networking, learn extra networking along the way. You have to learn the networking anyway, so just pay a little more attention to networking. I would do them all at the same time. So for my cloud security people, I have them working on their security stuff and their cloud stuff all at the same time. For the cloud networking people, our cloud infrastructure people, do the networking at the same time. By doing it this way, it's like when you're in university, you do 5 classes at the same time. When we study healthcare and we do our residencies or internships or things like this, all this stuff is really, really great. But how are we doing? What are we doing? I might be doing a pediatric rotation and learning cardiology at the same time, maybe pediatric cardiology. But the point is do them both at the same time. First, learn the cloud, but also get really, 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 really good what am I looking for? Learn the cloud. And Chris, if you can bring up the question, because I forgot. So learn the cloud and learn your specialty all at the same time. So when you're learning the cloud, you're learning networking. Great, Chris, I can see it, thanks. So when you're learning the cloud, you're learning networking. So just learn more. When you're focusing on BGP, learn more. I would definitely do that. Sanjar, hi, Mike, talk about automation engineering. Sanjar, I am not an automation engineer, so I don't want to give you too much information about that. But I will tell you that the future does involve automation, typically speaking from a DevOps perspective, from a software release cycle, as well as automation. But I'm not an automation engineer, and it's not my specialty, so I don't want to misguide you. Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. EWB_4B4D. Do I feel that there is an age bias preference? Yes. If you are younger, it is much harder to get a job as a cloud architect than if you're older. It is much easier for me to get a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old a cloud architect job than it is a 20-year-old, but I can still do it every day. So yes, there is an age bias. Here's the thing, and Chris from my team will post a link to what to do at your age. When you are young, it's much harder to become a cloud architect, and here's the reason why. You got to look at the cloud architect job itself. The cloud architect job is a strategic advisor to a CEO or to a business. And most likely the people you're advising are going to be between 50 and 70 years old. So they're not going to be young. Now, if you're there and you're 22 years old, people are going to say, energy, enthusiasm, no experience, no knowledge. So when you're younger, it is a lot harder to get a chair where you're an advisor. But when you are younger, there's still some things working in your behalf. So the key is knowing which ones to use. When you are younger, you are full of energy. So for the people that are young, that want to be architects, we got to make them very good. The young people, we have to focus even more on their communication skills, and we have to make them better. Much better than the older people, because the world is biased against them. They're going to assume if you're young, you just don't know. And how do you advise somebody on their business if you're young? So when we have somebody young, we have to show that energy, enthusiasm, and the speed that the young person learns is great. And we've got to show that's the strength. Because when we're dealing with older people, we're dealing with people that don't learn as fast, but they have more experience. And for an architect, you want a person with life experience, not even a tech experience. Business experience, leadership experience, communication skills experience. So when you're young, it's much harder to get these cloud jobs than when you're older. So there is a bias against younger people. So when you're younger, you got to show that you've got gravitas. You've got to show that you've got the capability to learn. You've got to show your energy and enthusiasm, that you're a fireball that won't quit until the job's done. In fact, when I was younger, I got really lucky. I worked very hard in my career. I mean, very, very hard in my career. And I had a career that was like a rocket ship. It just took off like a rocket. And it was really great. I remember being in a dinner meeting where my executive coach was actually present. And she was on my team. And my manager says, I'm the youngest guy in the room now at 45, right? And I looked and I smiled and I felt this huge kick under the table. And I looked at my mentor, who was an executive coach, and she looked at me and she shook her head. And I knew instantly she meant, don't tell anybody that I was 35 years old or 34 years old. That night, we left that meeting. My executive coach said, Mike, I wanted to let you know why I kicked you. Right now, everybody thinks you're 50. And the second they think you're 34, you're going to lose all that credibility you have. You're going to lose all that because the bias is going to come in about your youth. So don't tell anybody about your age. So the key is, if you're older, it's assumed that you've got some life experience, some wisdom, some advisory experience. So yes, there is a bias against young people when it comes to being a cloud architect. And yes, you can still get hired. So, does age matter? The answer is yes, it does. It's easier if you're older. If you're older, we've got wisdom and we play to our wisdom. And in that video that Chris put for my team, we tell you how to win at any age, what to do when you're younger and what to do when you're older. So you're always going to get cloud hired, because it's all about getting cloud hired. At every stage of our life, we have different strengths and weaknesses. So it's not about which one is better. It's about how to maximize the things that we have at the time, and it changes with time. So yes, you can do it. You can get it at any age, but it's a lot easier if you're older. Hope I answered your question there. How do I feel about landing your first cloud architect role into a consulting firm versus hiring an architect? Well, you're asking me AWS directly. So, AWS is an option to go work for. It's one of your options. There's a lot of options that are equally as good, potentially even a lot better. So I like AWS. I love AWS, but there's lots of companies that are going to be at least as good. You could go to a bank and earn 4 times more than AWS would pay you and work half of the hours and have half of the stress, for example. You could go to a consulting firm. Lots of my graduates are working in consulting firms, whether they be Bearing Point or Accenture or Deloitte. I've got an incredible number of students that have graduated that are working there. It's where you're going to be happy. Here's the thing. At a consulting firm, they're going to teach you a lot. Do you know what they teach the consulting firms? Assuming you're part of the consulting division, they teach you how to walk, how to talk, how to dress. They focus extensively on executive presence, on CXO relevancy. They will do, a couple of $100,000 of leadership training when they hire someone to make you great. Where did I learn half of this? When I went into management consulting. So consulting firms are great. First time I heard a Robert Cialdini lecture or class was when I was in management consulting. So consulting is great. If you have the opportunity and can land yourself your first job at a managed service provider or consulting, go do it. I think it's really, really, really great. Incredibly great. I mean, love it, love it, love it. But it doesn't matter whether it's consulting. Don't limit yourself to AWS. That's one employer. There's a few 100,000 employers that are hiring cloud architects. AWS is just one of them. And there's lots of other organizations. Dell hires cloud architects. Cisco hires cloud architects. Palo Alto hires cloud architects. Verizon hires cloud architects. IBM has some of the best cloud architects that are out there. Everybody's got cloud architects. It's not just AWS. Don't limit yourself to that. Somebody, Chris, if you could bring in the next question. VMHG, which route is most future-proof? Data analytics, artificial intelligence, or security? Well, here's the thing. I think security is very, very, very good. Here's where I really think your best place to be is architecture. And here's why. Engineering can be offshored. I was speaking to some really, really, really bright, amazing people yesterday in Cameroon. Really amazing people. And here's the thing. Right now and in the US, we've got this great resignation. All these people are quitting their jobs. There's no reason that somebody in India or Africa or anywhere in the world can't go do all these tech hands-on jobs. It's all in the cloud. We can SSH from any location. So I think in the future, we're going to see a proliferation of all this engineering work throughout the world. So if I was really looking for building a long-term career with higher salaries, I would start looking for the things that are harder to move around. Architecture or design is harder to move because you've got to get in front of the customer. So I think architecture is the most future-proof. I also think that, the ML AI stuff, I think is pretty darn future-proof because I think we're going to see a lot of it. But, I don't know what that future is going to bring because I think we're barely just beginning to scratch the surface on some of the things that are actually going on that are capable with machine learning. We may find some of these things are really great, and we may also find that some of these things are really terrible. So I don't know the future of machine learning, but I think it's a really, really, really good one. So data science, yes, but not data analytics. And here's the difference. Data science or data analytics is just analyzing numbers. I don't see us needing a lot of people to analyze numbers. I see having people that can analyze the numbers, that know what the numbers mean, that can advise the next series of executives what to do with those numbers. That, by the way, that is special. So the analytical architects, those people that know what to do with the data. Excuse me. Excuse me. A little bit under the weather today, and a little of that plus drinking water didn't work so well. Apologies. So, I'm not exactly sure for the future, but I see data science as an amazingly good career for the future. I see any of the AI stuff, but I also think security is going to be there. The more stuff goes online, the more hacks, and everything is going to the cloud. Apologies, I'm really a cough really had me tearing. So if everything goes to the cloud, I want you to think about this. So more stuff on the cloud. more stuff to be hacked. What's the highest value target right now in the entire world? It's the cloud. The cloud is the best thing in the world to hack. Here's the reason. If you hack into a business, you hack into one business. If you hack into the cloud, like the Microsoft cloud got hacked into a month ago, you get access to everybody's customers. So I see the more stuff goes on the cloud, by far, much more security are we going to need. So I still think security is going to be one of our best options moving forward. Security, architecture, and the data and analytics piece, not so much the data analytics, but more the science of what to do with it. I see a lot of these things. Chris, I'm not sure if there's any more of my coughing fit scared everybody away. Miss Lamin Jamin, you plan on creating a blog to brand yourself? Good. That's helpful. Would you recommend you keep your blog focused on a specific specialty or a specific sector? I don't know, Miss Lamin Jamin, what do you know more about? Do you know more about a specific sector? If so, I would do that. Like if you had a healthcare background, I would pick healthcare. If you had a finance background, I would pick finance. If you don't, I would pick a specific technology. Or if you're really passionate about a specific technology, I would pick that technology. I don't really think it matters which one you want to use at all. I think the only thing that matters is that you just find something that you truly love. Because if you're going to write about it, you can't just write about it. You know, coming up with a basic blog, there's no point. When you write a blog, it's your brand. You want to make it better than anything you've ever written in your entire life. You want to make it so good, so incredible that people are going to come to you. So it's got to be something you really love. So that's exactly what I'd be actually referring to. Make it something that you truly love. And I think you'll be in great shape.
So you are caught up.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Does anybody have any more questions for me? Because if you've got questions, I love answering them. I'll do anything I can to help you with your careers. Otherwise, I'm going to come back on Wednesday, and I'm totally happy to be here. And on Thursday, we're going to have our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. And we're going to tell you everything on this webinar. We're going to have a ball. We're going to talk about what hiring managers want. We're going to talk about how to become the hiring manager's dream hire, how to get past HR and all the auto rejections. We're going to talk about it all, and it's a really good time. And of course, you'll be able to ask questions live on Zoom. So super excited to work with any of you along the way. Chris, is there any more questions? If there are, put them on screen. Otherwise, we'll come back.
No, that's it.
Okay, so let me just address B2DP.1. Just signed up. Entire department was outsourced to India. Old IBM, HP, R&D engineers. So yeah, exactly. That's what I think is going to go happening. If we don't focus on the architecture or the things that we're really good at, the things that we can do so good that require us to be on person, there's no reason we can't be actually offshoring or outsourcing a lot of these things. So pick a specialty, focus on your communication skills, focus on the skills that make you so good that an organization can't live without you, and it'll be great. B2Point, we look forward to working with you. We'll see you. First live class is going to be tomorrow. It's going to be a live class, and it's going to be a really fun class. I have to go send everybody on Slack an update about what the class is going to be tomorrow, because we've got a special architecture that's going to be super fun. So super excited to see you in class. Make sure you look for that email that says, welcome to Go Cloud Architects. There is really critical stuff in there. And if for some reason you don't get it, reach out to us and let us know. If anybody's got any questions on our training, I will pop in the phone number and into the window. And then somebody is asking a question about how do you access the coupon? So let me answer that. So Paul, first thing you do is you click the link to our page, which is on the training.gocloudarchitects.com page. Chris, I'm going to pop a link to that so I can walk somebody through that if they're interested right now. I'm popping it in the link in the chat box. So if you click the link that I just posted on the chat box, that will take you to the course. Then from there, it will say $9.99 and you click purchase. Now, if you chose to use the payment plan, you can click inside that $9.99 box and select 3 times $350. Then what you'll do is you will click purchase and you will create an account. First name, last name, and email address. And then next, what's going to happen is after you press submit, there'll be a section where it says have a coupon. Where it says have a coupon, enter the coupon code Black Friday, all lowercase, and it will deduct 35% off. And if you have any questions, call our office at 973-896-4889. And we are in the US, so there'll be a plus. But we also use WhatsApp for our international clients. So we could be reached at +1 973-896-4889 if you've got any questions. So if you've got any questions on that, we would love to help you out with it. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to click that page. You're going to sign up for an account. And then after you sign up for an account, it'll say have a coupon. Click that, enter the coupon code Black Friday, and it will take 35% off. So do you have any more questions for me? And if you want to try that, if you want me to sit around and wait for a minute, I am happy to do that, Paul, because I hate to see you lose out on that 35% discount that expires tonight. So any other questions for me? Okay, well, if there's no more questions for me, I will be back on Wednesday. It's been an honor and a privilege to speak to you all, and look forward to speaking to you or seeing you in another video. I'm going to have lots of new videos coming for you this week. Since it's a holiday week, I want to make sure we give you guys as much as we can to help you get the best careers. So, Paul, I hope you've got that, because I'd love to work with you, maybe see you in class tomorrow and already start working on some architecture fun. So take care, everybody. It's been an honor and a privilege to spend the afternoon with you. I'll be back on Wednesday morning. And of course, let's get everybody cloud hired. Take care, everybody.